But I think the development of full artificial intelligence will spell the end of the human race.
It's a flying object, and we don't know what it is. I would hope somebody is checking it out.
I don't know if it was a rocket or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. It was too fast to be an airplane.
I'm glad the Pentagon is looking at this, because if it poses a threat, I want them on top of it.
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field.
You said there's lights in the sky?
The internet has become the command center for criminals and terrorists.
911, what's your emergency? I need help, please help!
Aliens won't let it happen. You know, that's what we're instructed to say.
Roswell, Area 51. Alien kept deep under the ground.
110. Self-serving. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio.
Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest. Into the digital darkness. Good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, DLive, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, we're taking your calls as we get weird. It is, as I like to say, pretty much what we do these days. But it's not the only thing we do. Because, of course, what's the point in getting weird if you can't keep one foot in the real world, as I've always said. Now, the bizarre part about all of these conversations is, well, where do I start? There's a lot of bizarre parts, okay? Because, of course, we're talking about being human outside of human power structures, okay? Because, of course, as I always say, that's way above my pay grade, and I can't really comment directly on it with authority, okay? However, it's sure as hell fun to speculate on what these things actually look like, and we've talked about this quite a lot in the past, and we will continue to talk about these types of things quite a lot in the future. So a couple of things before we start. I want to make sure that, again, so I'm calling this tonight, and so this is not a slight in any way. This is not blaspheme, nothing like that, okay? I just want everybody to step outside of a reality tunnel and come with me into a complex discussion about where we came from in the anthropological sense, okay? And leave behind the gods, the current gods, okay? Whatever it is you believe, I'm not trying to step on that. But I am calling this the silence protocol and why we stopped hearing the gods, okay? So that's the first thing. It is no ill will intended here. Second thing is there's no truth to be found here. As I always say as part of these conversations, the idea is to get together and sort of free ourselves from the human dogma cycles I always like to talk about. And, of course, the reality tunnels. And look at things in a slightly different way. So all the disclaimers do apply. There's no truth to be found here. It's just ideas. It's just sort of looking at things a little differently. And think about, Marvel's What If, all right? Something like that. And if it's as if it was applied to Earth. And that's a philosophical construct, and that's the way we tackle it. And that's what Troubled Minds is. So once again, please This is not meant to be a blasphemous conversation. This is meant to look at the ancients and how, well, it began. And I was looking at all manner of things. And as you know, inspiration comes from all wild and weird places. And I was spinning through last night, as many of you saw if you follow me on X. I was kind of posting some stuff from this book. It's called the original Legends and Lore, which of course later became, this is from Dungeons and Dragons, of course, but it later became deities and demigods. And it's fantastic. It has all kinds of mythology and folklore and, the things that I really love to talk about and consider as part of these larger conversations. However, this one goes back to, we're talking the mid 80s when I was just a child. And as usual, some of these things still resonate today for me because it's really where I came from. I cut my teeth on mythology in Dungeons and Dragons and learning about these entities from these books, which I could never afford, by the way, which is super funny. I would go into the stores and read them with my grubby little kid hands until they kicked me out of the store, which, I'm sure we probably had some level of that as we were kids, but they're all here. I mean, even in the original one, they have the Cthulhu entities. They might be in here. I didn't check, but I'm not sure which version this is, but they got the Greek mythology and all the rest. Anyway, so I was going through this and just kind of cruising through some of this stuff and wondering what my favorite, god of the old days was, the god of the Legends of Lore, a top 3 or a top 5. So we'll start with that. Do you have a favorite mythology, an ancient favorite mythology, and maybe a favorite god or demigod that's always kind of resonated with you in some way? All right, that's the first question we start with, because I think it's fun to just kind of find out what people know about mythology. And not only that, if it's something that has resonated with you for your entire life, as it has with me. And I do wonder if there's something larger to that maybe we'll get to tonight. Maybe not, as usual, but it's there's a lot here, as you can tell if you're spinning through this and watching some of these things. Of course, yes, they have the Egyptian stuff. I'll leave up the hieroglyphs for a minute because that's super cool. But anyway, all right. So I was thinking this, and not just, let's say, with the concept of the deities and demigods and mythology and where we came from and all the rest, but I was thinking, how come in the old days, actually, I should probably just read the write-up. That's probably the best way to do it. Instead of cooking this poorly, let's cook this the right way. And let me just read from this thing because it's really good. And here we go. All right. Links in the description. Do check it out if you're interested. I do recommend it for further reading. But here we go. We'll start here. The human ear once perceived more than sound. Ancient texts speak of voices that arrived without mouths, wisdom that descended without teachers. From the oracle at Delphi to the prophets of the desert, from Hindu rishis to Mesoamerican shamans, the pattern remains consistent. Direct communication with intelligences beyond the veil of ordinary perception. Then, somewhere between antiquity and modernity, the channel went dead. The silence protocol, as I'm calling it tonight, suggests this wasn't accidental. Consider the timeline. As civilizations grew more complex, as bronze gave way to iron and iron to industry, the reports of divine contact didn't gradually fade. They ceased with suspicious uniformity. The last great prophets emerged just as humanity began reshaping its relationship with the electromagnetic spectrum. The correlation deserves scrutiny. Our ancestors built temples at specific coordinates, raised standing stones along magnetic anomalies, oriented pyramids to stellar configurations with obsessive precision. These weren't monuments to absent gods, but functioning receivers, tuned to frequencies we've since forgotten how to access. The Aboriginal song lines, the Chinese dragon paths, the British ley lines, all describe an energetic grid that primitive technology couldn't have detected, yet somehow informed every sacred site's placement. Okay? Now, that's where we start. All the ancient cultures had their pantheons. Okay, back to where we started this Legends and Lore book, which is fantastic. I love it so much. I just want to stop and just read this. There's Thoth. There we go. We'll leave Thoth up because why not, right? But, okay. And so not just all the ancestors had their pantheons, but it seemed as if there was a deep communal presence of humanity to the gods themselves. Okay, even something called the bicameral mind, which we'll get to later tonight, where we heard these voices in our heads, and they were from somewhere, almost as if it was a download or as if it was maybe even our internal monologue fooling us, as if there was some divine presence within or without sending us messages. And then suddenly, once again, as industry really became where we're at today, suddenly all of this stuff kind of went away. And I wonder, if there's a reason for it. And that's the question I'm asking tonight. Do you think there's, let's say, maybe something with the electromagnetic relationship of technology where maybe we're dampening these signals? Maybe the voices are still out there waiting to be heard, and sometimes they sneak through. Or do you think this is just old stories that should or should not be forgotten? I don't know. You know me. Answers few, questions many, and I really mean that. And that's that. So puts us where we need to be. So I'm going to take a quick break. We'll do that together. 1 minute. More Troubled Minds coming up. We got James in here. We'll talk to him momentarily. We are taking your calls as well if you want to be part of the conversation. Remember, it is called the Silence Protocol. Why we stopped hearing the gods, and why do you think that is? Be right back. More Troubled Minds coming up in exactly 1 minute. Don't go anywhere. More on the way. In a world increasingly shaped by AI, human inspiration remains the beating heart of creativity. Alien Skin by Tremble, a hauntingly beautiful piano ballad, reminds us that while algorithms can mimic art, the raw, unfiltered emotions of human experience are irreplaceable.
So here I sit, locked in my room again.
Written and composed by Jesse Ian in collaboration with Todd Smith, this progressive masterpiece delves into the depths of internalized grief and the silent toll of artistic compromise. As AI reshapes our reality, Alien Skin stands as a testament to the timeless power of human emotion and the complex beauty that only true artists can evoke. Experience the haunting beauty of Alien Skin by Tremble and support human inspiration. Available now on iTunes. Has everybody checked out that track? Please do if you haven't. Available now on iTunes. Thank you for sponsoring the show, Human Inspiration. All right, back to the Silence Protocol. Look, so why did we stop hearing the gods? And now, again, I recognize some of us still do, okay? So I'm not discounting that. I'm saying that throughout history, all of these pantheons seem to be so front and center to everything in life. And there's some obvious reasons for that, okay? Pretty obvious reasons, I think. But beyond that, how come they all just faded away? As if somebody turned off the frequency switch, the ability for us to commune with these, even maybe boil them down and not call them gods, but as I like to call them, primordial nature spirits, something to that effect, right? Which, of course, is exactly why, in many cases, these ancient pantheons mirrored each other in very specific and particular ways, because it was a mirror of the human experience and us sort of giving life to these certain aspects of the larger context of our life together on Earth as these humans that come and go, and our ancestors and the wisdom and all the things. Anyway, so that's where we start tonight. I'm not exactly sure what the answer here is, but a lot of ideas were kind of rolling through my head as I was thinking about it. But it feels as if a lot of these old pantheons may not have been as useless as it seems, because of course modern anthropology and that type of thing would tell you, well, Mike, it's just it's exactly as you described. We were trying to explain the world around us, and the best way to do it was with magic and with gods and folklore and mythology, and that's okay. Like, I get that, but I think there's something else to this, because it does seem as if that bicameral mind and that voice within was drawing us to a particular place, and maybe drawing us to the coming technological singularity. Maybe we've all been locked in this cycle of that retrocausal aspect of being dragged along by the ear, regardless of whether we wanted to get there or not. But maybe that was it all along. Maybe it was always sort of the whispering in our ear of ourselves from the future, dragging us to where we needed to be. Who knows? But anyway, so that's the question. What were the old gods? What are some of your favorites, not just pantheons, but let's say a particular individual or a magic power they had or something? I don't know, think Thor and the lightning, something like that, right? There's a lot of really, really good stuff in this book, The Legends and Lore. But anyway, that's where we begin. And do you think it was, let's say, intentional or accidental that it seems as if the antenna or the communication factor with these ancient entities was shut off? And that's where my mind is now. And we'll get to the rest of this, because there's some other really wild theories that come into play, including that bicameral mind. But I don't want to blow all the good stuff right up front, because then you'd all just leave, and then there'd be me just talking to myself, which is quite a bit less fun. But anyway, love to hear your thoughts on this. A lot of ways to look at this, of course. And is it seeming intentional, or does it seem like maybe this is a natural aspect of civilizations as they rise and fall? We just forget the gods and move on to the next batch, whatever that looks like, for better or worse. Love to hear your thoughts if you want to be part of the conversation tonight. 702-957-1037. You can click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show just like this. Thanks for being patient, my man. Let's go to James in Michigan, the paranormal expert at Troubled Minds, Salcedo Paranormal. What's going on, my man? Go right ahead, sir.
I'm okay. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, sir. Just adjusted the volume, as I always have to do, because I always fiddle with my knobs in between shows. But yeah, go right ahead. Welcome to the thing. Hope you're feeling well tonight. And what do you got for us?
Yeah, a great topic. Great. I listened to the write-up. There's too much for me to really process all at once. I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversation about it. I do think that, and I've heard this from other people too, other shows, other books, that the whole industrialization of that humanity in the recent years started. I think if there wasn't an intentional change before from those other beings, from those primordial nature spirits or deities or whatever, if they didn't do something themselves to go silent, I think that with all the technology that evolved from modern industrial kind of practices and things, I think that could easily have changed the minds of a lot of people, gotten them to stop thinking about as many of the older stories and myths. And one thing I wanted to point out too, to a lot of people around the world, the things that some people would think of as myths, others think of as being reality. Whether the rest of people want to accept that or not. I think that around the world, there's beliefs in things that others say are just mythical, and of course I'm not in a position to say who's right or wrong. That I'm just pointing out that these things were real to a lot of people in different ways. But then again, over time, with development of technology and just societies evolving as they do, I can definitely see things changing to where people focus less on that. But I don't think it ever really has, as you said, truly gone away. It's just maybe hidden and or not thought about or talked about as much.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because think about it this way. Like this is something that Derek says too. Meet the new gods, the same as the old gods. It's as if we just continue to recycle these same ideas, and a lot of things change, but a lot of things also don't change. And so leaving behind old names, and we've talked about this sort of maybe resonant frequencies of a particular god's name or something that was worshipped for maybe 1,000 years on earth, but then kind of faded into obscurity and has literally been forgotten. What does that look like? And was that ever actually something to be communed with? Was it, and again, I'm not saying it's like a bad energy or something, but if let's say it was sentient in some capacity, it was communing with the cosmos in some way that we cannot yet define, sort of a larger conscious aspect. I don't know. Do you think it minds that we just keep calling it different names every several hundred years on different parts of the world? Like, hey, you're Thor today, but tomorrow you're going to be this or you're going to be that. I don't know. It's a weird thing to me to consider that it's been so, what'd you call it? I don't know. The word will come to me. Words are hard. I take on that.
Words are very hard.
Words are definitely hard.
I don't know. I think it would depend on, again, just how much information we have received from these beings. If we received a name, if anyone received a name directly, let's say it was more than just us coming up with names, humans coming up with names, then maybe it might not care for being sort of reimagined later on by other people. Of course, we've all heard, probably read about how different cultures would change, would basically conquer and or assimilate other cultures, and then try to work the previous culture's pantheon into their own and or rework it to match their own better. And I'm thinking of like Greek to Roman to other places as well. But so I guess it just depends on who or what is out there. That ultimate question of who or what is out there, and how conscious is it of us or aware of us, and how much attention does it want? I mean, we know that people give these forces and beings a lot of attention, but I always wonder too: do they always want attention that people give them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, actually, for a lot of reasons, because I wonder if, let's say, we're sort of always communing with the same thing, and you could describe this as, that primordial consciousness that has always been here, sort of waiting for us to catch up to it so we can communicate perfectly, more perfectly than we have. Or what if it's not? It's just some maybe trickster entity that's been here all along and is completely fine being described as all manner of different deities over the years and through different civilizations because it doesn't want to be named specifically, which would be the big P phenomenon, right? Something to that effect. And I can see why that might be the Tetragrammaton, or is it TON, I think, at the end, but the power in the name, in an actual name. If we could put a name to an entity, as they say in the magic of old, that it means you have power over said entity. So I wonder if all these different pantheons and the different faces to the same sort of natural elements of the human experience are intentionally obfuscated and given different names, and even if similar guises. I don't know. Got a thought on that?
And it's just also made me thinking, what is the difference, or is there a difference between nature spirits that were here before people and thought forms that people created and then maybe later mistook as being those same nature spirits? In other words, let's just take the idea of a Thor, like a god or deity named Thor. Was there originally one that went by that name? Or is it some being that was created out of the thoughts and energy of countless people over time? And again, so I don't know, I guess maybe this is adding a whole other wrinkle into this that maybe he didn't plan on, but how much of what we make contact with out there is our own humanity's own energy platforms from over time, and how much is something else? And do those all interact or combine or not?
Yeah, I love that. And the question, of course, the answer, of course, is, I know the answer, James. The answer is obviously, no, I'm just kidding. I don't know the answer at all. It's really the answer. But yeah, that type of thing does make me wonder. And do I look scared, by the way, if this takes a turn I didn't expect? Oh, of course not. That's exactly why we do this. So you're definitely welcome to kind of peel it out in different areas, as you know. Nonlinear, open-ended is the way these conversations go. My job is to just bring you kind of a, mildly compelling idea, and then sometimes get weird, and then let's see where it heads and see what you guys think about these conversations and these ideas. So yeah, a lot happening, a lot going on with this, and I have some theories, of course, which we'll kick around as, not really direct, specific, gotcha, I knew it type of theories, but possibilities, as I like to say, because that's really the best way to think about ideas. And let's even say life itself as possibilities, because without believing in the concept of multiple possibilities in a moment, certainly you're limiting yourself to what is handed to you. About 30 seconds, James, if you got anything on that.
Yeah, I will, later on at this time, I will give an example of a thought form that may have been created based on a legend about a haunted location that we don't know what came first, because there's no historical evidence of this figure that this legend talks about, and yet there's an apparition that fits the legend that has been caught on camera. So just the thought there on thought forms as far as how this may fit in with everything.
Nice. And which came first, right? Back to the chicken and the egg scenario here. And even maybe entities from the days of yore, as I like to call it, maybe manifesting themselves in particular ways through, again, mass media, through pop culture, through all manner of wild ideas. Yeah, love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. We're taking your calls. So here with James tonight. As you know, you're welcome to stay right there. We'll get back to you momentarily, and I'd love to hear your theory on that paranormal one, at least the lead in and how it fits to this. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as well. If you want to be part of the conversation, that's 702-957-1037. You can click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. And what do you think? I don't know. I'm calling it the silence protocol. And we have talked about this in the past before. So if you're like, is this a rerun, Mike? No, it's not. But having sort of revisiting older ideas we've touched on before are always it is always fascinating because you never know what we left behind the first time. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Be right back. More on the way. Love to hear your thoughts.
Caught in a static haze, the airwaves are whispering, divine frequencies fade. Lost in the scrambling, once we soared high above. Now we're under this pressure, a signal that once was love, broken by hidden measure. Turn up and feel the spark, yeah, turn, reach into the unknown, let it start. Yeah, turn, push past the noise, let it be. Yeah, turn, searching for clear sounds in a world so disconnected. Faint echoes surround with truths that we neglected. Can we break through this wall to regain what they stole? Reach out, hear the call. Together we become whole. Turn up and feel the spark. Yeah, turn, reach into the unknown, let it start. Yeah, turn, push past the noise, let it be. Yeah, turn, in the chaos, hear the tune, feel the pulse, it's coming soon. Together we'll fight this war until we find what we lost before. Turn up and feel the spark. Yeah, turn, reach into the unknown, let it start. Yeah, turn, push past the noise, let it be. Yeah, turn. In shadows of the night, we're searching for our truth. With every beat we rise, fighting for our youth. Break the chains of silence, let our voices rise. Illuminate the dark, love will be our guide. Turn up and feel the spark.
Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, DLive, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. Tonight we're taking your calls as we discuss the silence protocol, why we stopped hearing the gods over the course of humanity. What if humanity's disconnection from the divine wasn't natural evolution, but engineered silence? What if the Tower of Babel was a technological event? Dreams were deliberately scrambled and sacred frequencies were systematically replaced with discord. And Discord, of course, is not Join the Discord, which you can. Discord's a fantastic program in the modern day. But Discord itself, of course, meant the original tune of heaven, or of the early universe of the Tolkien mythology. In the beginning, there was sound and there was light. The discord of such. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing to consider. However, think of it this way. Let's say we were able to communicate with the old pantheons in different ways, okay? And this is pre-modern technology. So is it possible that there's some sort of, Faraday cage we've built for ourselves with technology that's really clouding our ability to maybe channel these entities. And I know channeled entities and gods and stuff, and mixing the metaphors is, like I said, we're on on a shaky ground here. And like I said, my intention is not to be blasphemous and agitate you and whatnot. Okay, so remember that. But if there's like a particular frequency that could dial into, Thor, for instance, or Odin, or Thoth of the Emerald Tablets fame, or any of the old, let's say, deities of the old ways, maybe there was a frequency you could tune into to actually communicate with them directly. And maybe this was all intentional, and maybe it's technology that we forgot. I don't know. What is your thought on this? There's a lot of ways to look at it, of course, and that's why we do it this way, to talk about you guys. What do you think? Am I too far off the rails this time? Damn it, Mike. Now you've done it. Maybe, because I tend to do that from time to time. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. We got Matt Sal coming up. James, anything to add to that? And we'll go to Matt Sal and talk to you guys.
Well, just real quick, I'll just go into that story I was talking about before the break there, because I can keep it pretty short. There was a legend about a woman that died at this Myrtles Plantation over in Louisiana, for those that have heard about it. And but from what I've read online, there's a lot of debate and people saying that there is no historical basis for that legend. And yet people have seen and even caught in camera apparitions that fit the description of the woman from that legend. So was there already a consciousness there that basically just energy and consciousness there that then took that form? Or like we talked about in the first segment, did the thoughts of people going there, hearing that story for years, probably decades now, did all those thoughts and all that energy and all that focus on this figure create it somehow? And so that's what I wanted to get to with that. The other minor detail there with you mentioned electromagnetic fields and all that. The fascinating thing about that is, first, it's been proven that they can, if they're not, if they're too strong or the right wiring in places is not shielded correctly, it can have negative physical effects on people. But also, there is the theory that's pretty common in paranormal investigation that disembodied consciousness can draw on the energy from wiring and electronics in homes to manifest themselves. So the development of technology, I don't know if it really has directly caused, again, that silence that you're talking about. I wonder if it's more just the focus on the technology, the focus on modern devices that has done it more so than the devices themselves. But of course, I have no idea.
Yeah, well, me too. I have no idea. I love that. So the question, so what was the name of that entity, the ghost? Is there a name for that? Or is there a particular, is there somewhere we can look that up and kind of follow up on that? Or if not, that's okay too. Just curious, because I want to dig it up and pull the article if I can find it.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the name. I can't remember the name of the person, but I can try to look that up too while we're listening and see what I can find for you.
Okay, absolutely. Don't worry about it. If it just comes to mind, you let me know and I'll pull it up. I'll find it. Okay, don't strain your eyes. I know your eye time is very precious and can give you headaches and stuff. So don't worry one little bit about it. If it comes to mind, let me know and I'll look it up for you. Okay, appreciate you, brother. You know him, you love him. He's staying here. He's not going anywhere. But please, before I forget to tell you, go give him a follow. Links in the description. troubledminds.org/friends. Scroll down. It says follow James here, and of course you could search it yourself as well. Troubled Minds. SalcedoParanormal.com is where you're going to find his actual website. And not just that, it's got all the stuff, his link to his books. It's got his podcast there, the radio show. You can find all that stuff there. Please go help James in all the ways. SalcedoParanormal.com, and spread the word and let people know about James and his great podcast. And again, how you become a paranormal expert, which I'm sure James is going to write a book on next, right?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Distracted there, but no problem. All the books, yes, because writing books is so easy.
And
no
of course, I was picking on you because he hates to be called an expert, by the way. So to call him a paranormal expert to get under his skin. Anyway, okay, so that's what's on deck tonight. We're talking about this weird silence protocol, and why is it that the old gods are the same as the new gods? Okay, that weird part, but then also that we address them differently, as if it was something cooked up in a lab or something, and we're working the greatest psyop of all time, because maybe the old names were the right names. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. And how weird does it get with the tale that James just told there, and were these entities kind of drawing us to maybe cite them as particular faces or names in particular times or places? I don't know. You tell me. 702-957-1037. You can click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. Easy as that. Let's go to Matthew in California. Temple of the Owl. What's up, Matt's Owl? How you doing, my man? You're on Troubled Minds. How are you, sir? And go right ahead.
Hey, Mike. Can you hear me? Good.
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Cool, man. Yeah, this is a great topic tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
I just had one about, I was reading this book called Geomancy for Beginners. And it's about, water witching, using rods, dowsing rods to find wells. And my grandmother, still alive, she saw the book and she goes, "Oh, that reminds me. I had the city sent me a letter asking if our well was still active. And if it, because sometimes over time, I guess wells cave in. And she had to send a letter back to say, yeah, their well was still working, that they had a well. And I was like, you guys have a well? And she was telling me about how her father, which would be my great grandfather, he was a water witcher. And he was the one that doused like all the wells in this town when it was first built. Because this town is on like an aquifer. And he was finding all the wells. And I was asking her about it, talking about it. And the weird thing was, because I was learning, dowsing rods and the sticks and the old ways of holding the stick, and you got to walk a certain cadence and all that. But come to find out that my great grandfather, how he would do it, he would just start walking. He would just go out there. He had no sticks. He had no dowsing rods. He had no anything. He just walked out there in the field, and they just let him go. And he would stop and tell my grandfather, "This is where I want you to dig." And he would hit the well every time. 100% accuracy. And so I guess that's, is that hereditary, right? Like, can I do that?
I'm sure you can.
It's weird how, it's weird how, like he wasn't using any tools or anything. So I feel like it is like that. Like back in the day, it was easier to communicate with the land because we were so connected to it. And now we're like in our houses, in our towns, in our cities, in our communities, and we're not connected with nature at all. So we lost it. Am I kind of on the right track here for the show tonight?
No, exactly right. You're right where you need to be, and I think this is exactly the point of it. And one of the explanations that the thinking modern person would describe, because you're right. There's something to that, and they say witching, dowsing is pseudoscience, and yet there are people that get paid massive amounts of money to actually go find wells in places that are, very short on water. And they're, you got to find these particular places where the well will not just be findable, but will persist for, 100 years or more, because that's the whole point of a well, right? You're not going to just be like, oh, we only need it for a few years. And when it dries up, that's fine. No. You need to find deep, mystical source waters. Shout out Night Stalker, who mentioned that in the chat. You need to find it deep in the earth in particular places and actually be able to sniff it out. And I find it fascinating, actually, in that tale you told there, that he didn't need a dowsing rod. He did it sort of just by the frequency of the water and feeling it or whatever. I mean, that's incredible to me, because clearly there are modern tools for it these days. And, you can do, I don't know, scans and things. I mean, modern science, but as usual, there's a lot of ways that the old style still kind of beats the new style of things, with just the old ways, the hard-headed intuition of our ancestors that, once again, as I always and continue to say, we should not forget. But yeah, that's a fantastic tale there of your family. And I think there's no doubt you can do that. It's practice, right? How do you get to Carnegie Hall, as we always say? Practice, 100%. You're definitely on the right track here, in my opinion. What else you got? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think as we look in the past and see the ancestors and looking at like ancient architecture, it's not hard to believe that they were talking to something, or they had some sort of knowledge from beyond to build the things they have built. You can look at any of the ancient sites, the pyramids, Göbekli Tepe. This list goes on. All the ancient almanacs that built those pyramids, and cities in Mexico, and just all over the world. I feel like there was a connection to something, and here we are in our current timeline, or where we are now. We're like cut off from nature. We're in these sterile places, and it's weird. We're in our house, and we see a spider. And we're like, what are you doing here? And the spider is like, I was here first, bro. It's our humans, the way we live now is not, I don't think it's the way we're supposed to live. We're supposed to be out in nature. We're a part of nature, and we forget that. And we live in this modern world where we're kind of trapped in this matrix of driving to work every day and living in our sterile houses. We don't get the nature that we need. And you can even bring this to the whole controversy of conspiracy of grounding, right? We talked about this before, about like shoes were invented and it cuts us off from that world, from the nature. And there's movies and documentaries out there about the art of grounding, and how it is like it's a miracle of healing, that you could just walk barefoot on the earth. It seems so stupid, so simple. Just walking barefoot on the earth can heal you and make it helps your blood flow, which is like the whole point. But look at that up and look at the documentaries on just alone on that, and see how we're kind of trapped. We've been trapped away from nature, and then maybe they're like trying to suppress that voice of whatever they're in the past, the ancestors they were communicating with. Follow me?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, as I said before, I think we're onto something here, because there's a few other ways to look at this too, as this conversation develops into the larger place we're going. Is that a lot has been said about things like the 440 hertz versus the 432 hertz tuning conspiracy. I know we've all heard about that, which is the Western music. They say at some point, was it during the Baroque period? I don't know. So where they basically just changed the tuning of Western music to be based on a different sort of central C note, or whatever it was, whatever they did. And by doing that, maybe they sort of tuned out the ancient ways of music as magic, and us being able to maybe in a cathedral fire up the right frequency and actually attune to these entities. And think of it this way too. Let's say it was the frequency wars or whatever. I'm calling it that as in the write-up, which is mildly interesting, I think. And so think of it as this. So architecture as acoustic warfare. So from cathedrals, as I'm describing in the 440 hertz versus 432 hertz conspiracy, but from cathedrals to cubicles. So we used to sort of commune in these massive places that were built with these unbelievable engineering marvels of the ancient ways. And now, you find your local church and it's in like an old Pizza Hut or something. You know what I mean? And no offense. No, yeah, right. Old movie. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. We're an old movie theater. And I was thinking the exact same spot, by the way. I just didn't want to out us. But anyway, where Matt and I are from, there's a particular church that isn't literally operating in an old movie theater right now. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, so that type of thing, from the cathedrals to cubicles, and then these tuning conspiracies type stuff. I mean, maybe there is something to this, because grounding, of course, is a magnificent version of this, because the ultimate cathedral is going to be nature itself. But then these massive things were built to sort of amplify those signals. And maybe this is what we've been missing forever. I don't know. What do you think?
You brought something up to me, and I have to look it up. But there's a place, I forget where it is. A place I saw that it was an old, like a Greek. It wasn't a theater. It was. I'm gonna have to look it up, what it's called. But it was basically it was a theater built by this guy in ancient Greece, and it was the way it was built. The structure is kind of going up the side of this mountain, and there's seats, and the way it was built by height and depth and acoustics, it was for plays. And of course the Greeks, they love their plays. No matter where you sit in this, I don't know how to say it. It's a theater.
Amphitheater.
It's outside theater.
Yeah, amphitheater.
Made out of stone.
Says James. Yeah. That's what it is. Yep.
But you could sit there, and no matter where you are in the theater, you could hear the voices of the actors just talking regular. Like the sound bounces and amplifies out. I have to look it up what it's called.
Yeah, it's an amphitheater. And they actually did that in the Roman Colosseum and different places. They built these things to be structurally acoustic, generating to kind of echo through, so you could hear a regular speaking voice for a greater distance. And I mean, that's like ancient marvels all by itself. And so that it's funny you brought that up, because literally, was it yesterday, or maybe it had to have been yesterday, or maybe early Sunday, like kind of Sunday around noonish. I was talking to Mrs. Strange about this exact thing, because we were watching, there was Gladiator on TV, and you know how the guy comes out and goes, "I bring to you Maximus," and he's not really, he doesn't have a microphone, but that whole Colosseum was built to be an acoustic resonant, so that just sort of a loud speaking voice you could hear all the way up in the top back row. So I mean, you're spot on. It's called an amphitheater, I'm pretty sure, and that James is the one who dropped that in the chat, so thank you for that, James. But yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of really odd things that we've dropped as sort of technology that could stick, including air conditioning. There's some old old style air conditioning that was built in the Middle East because it was just so damn hot. And they kind of conquered it through a natural means of just building stuff, instead of, all the freon and the tubes and I mean, anyway, yeah, I think you're spot on, and we're on the same page here. Absolutely. So do you think there is, as part of that question then, in your opinion, do you think that it is something that's kind of been, maybe it is the greatest conspiracy of all time, in terms of us, sort of the signal between us and the old gods being shut off intentionally? Do you think it's that deep, or do you think that we're just kind of slowly forgetting as a natural process?
I think it's both. I think we're purposely being cut off, and things like, what did we lose at the Great Alexandrian Library? I feel it's kind of both. We're getting cut off on purpose, and then over time we're just kind of forgetting. And the next generation is not getting that right information, and it's all backwards now. Just real quick on frequencies. There's a concert hall by my house that they spent $4 million on the acoustics of like getting the acoustics of the place right. And some of those concerts I've been to there are the best sounding concerts I've ever heard. But then back to just the old ways. One of the things I think about is gardening. And I've been gardening for a while. I've kind of figured it out. But I realized something. I realized nobody ever taught me how to garden in my whole life. No one taught me. I kind of played with it and figured it out on my own, and had some okay things happen and some good things, but I figured it out. And with gardening, here's a whole conspiracy here. If you follow the instructions on the, the little things they give you on your plants, the little sticks, or like seeds on the back of a package of seeds, if you follow the instructions, it's not meant to help your garden grow. It's meant to help you, make you buy more stuff. You got to buy you got to buy the seed, and you got to buy the mulch, and you got to buy the fertilizer, and you got to buy all the extra things. But if you just follow your intention and plant it the way I wanted to plant it the first time, instead of following the instructions, it could have saved you a lot of money, because you could grow a garden on intention, on not knowing anything. Like, I just let it happen. But if you follow the instructions on the back of the packets of what they sell you, it's just to sell you more soil.
I feel like you're spying on me here. So the next thing I was going to bring up, it was the 440 hertz versus the 432 hertz, architecture versus as acoustic warfare, cathedrals to cubicles. And the very next line, you just said it, language devolution from sacred vibration to commercial code. That's exactly what you just said regarding the sort of our intuition, our connection to the earth. And then the back of the package is not really to help you. It's just to sell you more junk. Bernays propaganda really taking over the sacred spaces of the days of yore. And we should be super pissed off about it and recognize it and call it out where it should be called out, as you just did. And yeah, don't fall for it, guys. Don't go buy the stuff on the back of the pack. You're the best, Matt. What else you got? We got a few minutes left if you got anything else.
Yeah, I feel, and that goes with the cathedrals as well. They were not square. They were, they had like a big roof, and they had different, things to make acoustics happen. And now, here we are in our houses, and it's all square. And everywhere you look, it's a square. Your house is a square. Every room's a square. Your car's square. There's squares in the buildings. There's squares everywhere. And then, if you step out and look at nature, you don't see any squares in nature. So I feel like these squares, everything's a square, right? A laptop's a square, my phone's a square. Everything's in squares. And I feel like that is disconnecting us on purpose. If you look out in nature, there's no squares. There's spirals, there's loops and all that, but there's no squares in nature. And so here we are, we're kind of like stuck. They're kind of trying to trap us in these squares. Thanks, Mike. This is a great show. Good night.
And fantastic call. I appreciate you. Tell Lacey we said hello, and have a great one. You're the best.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you. You know we love him. That's Matthew in California. Again, affectionately Matzal is what we call him. He's again, go check out his podcast and radio show. He's here on the network with us. It's called Temple of the Owl. Search it yourself directly, or of course the easy way is to just go to troubledminds.org/friends. Scroll down a little bit. It says follow Matzal here. Click on that and go give him a follow on all the places. Yep, Matzal right there is his Spotify link, and go listen to his podcast. As you can tell, he's locked in a lot of ways, and I love that story about his great grandfather, was it? A family member, ancestor that was able to feel the resonant energy of the earth itself with no tools, just his intuition and experience. Wild stuff. Got about a minute, James, if you got anything to add to that.
Yeah, I found a couple of links. I tagged you in the chat, and I put one in the stage channel here too. But great call from Matzal. I think it's an amazing point that you don't often find squares. He's never seen squares in nature or rectangles. I know there's lines, but there's and of course there's the whole thing with ley lines. But beyond that, yeah, it seems accurate. And there's people that I've heard that can find people that are into dowsing that can do the whole dowsing thing. They can do that to find electrical lines in the ground, power lines in the ground, just as well as they can do that to find water. So that to me is really amazing.
I guess there's no end to the amount of sort of energy, frequency, vibration we can discover within ourselves and in the world around us if we just spend more time doing it, which again may be the greatest conspiracy of them all, like I've been saying. From cathedrals to cubicles. Think about it. Love to hear your thoughts on this. 702-957-1037. The Silence Protocol. Why we stopped hearing the gods. Be right back. More Troubled Minds on the way. Nobody on the line if you want to jump in here. Thanks for hanging out. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, DLive, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, I'm calling this the Silence Protocol. Why we stopped hearing the gods. And, of course, I'm not talking about modern gods. That's, very different. And I'm not, again, trying to step on toes and reality tunnels and dogmas and all the rest of that. You believe what you want to believe. I'm with you 100%. Okay? We're looking at the ancient days. We're going back to the pantheons of old. And how come those ideas, the resonant frequencies of the gods themselves, faded into obscurity? And if they did, because it seems like they did, and only, weird places on the internet like us kind of bring them up and talk about these sorts of things. But if they did, why? Was it manufactured? Was it some technological space we were supposed to kind of trace down from that retrocausal aspect I'm always talking about? Us, the future us dragging ourselves, kicking and screaming along the way? Or not? Was it something else entirely? Was it manufactured? Was it accidental? And what do you think is going on with it? And I don't know. Do you think they're feeling kind of bad right now that we forgot all about them when they were the center of the universe for so very long? Yeah, a lot of ways to really kind of tackle this. Like I said, nonlinear, open-ended. We don't have to again argue with each other or kind of my God can kind of kick your God's ass type stuff. Again, not to be blasphemous, but this is what some of this stuff devolves into in regular discourse in the regular world. This is Troubled Minds, and we can look at the world a little bit differently and recognize that we're probably individually not right about everything, because certainly I'm not. Right? Thanks Brent for shouting out my haircut. Says I'm looking younger. Yeah. Hey, thanks. Hey, James, anything you got? And we'll go to Shane.
Oh, you look the same to me. I'm just kidding.
Damn it. Actually, I look older, right? Damn it, James.
There's also a blind joke because I'm legally blind because couldn't help it.
The double zing.
Yeah, but no, great call from Mattel. And so this whole topic, I do wonder about that with it's an amazing question. Do other entities out there, do other deities or just other non-physical forms, do they care if we pay attention or not? I know for a long time, so I did a whole series of shows with Jen, the Arcane Observer, on festivals and carnivals and how those were such, in large part, they were, a lot of them in ancient times were designed to give attention to the beings that people thought of as being in charge of the world at the time, and the idea that they were designed that way intentionally and arranged that way intentionally by these beings. But now I'm just wondering, is that does it have to be the way it is, or again, because it makes me think of how when so many experiences people have with anomalous sightings and experiences, sometimes they'll see things, they'll see figures, and these whoever or whatever they are out there just do not seem to care about the people that are seeing them. They're just not interested. They're just going about whatever they're doing and don't even barely seem to notice, or they notice and they just keep on going their way and don't do anything. So I think it's an amazing question to think about that. And applying it to this topic as well.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, I don't know, as I always like to say, this stuff is complicated because looking at it from the different, sort of angles of, is this real? Is it not real? Because we're weaving in and out of those spaces, right? We're kind of like intentionally. So what do you believe? And I've said this before, and this was sort of a dig at the people out there that are always so sure about everything. And again, no offense if you're one of those people, but you know who they are. Like sort of the podcasters that know all the answers, the guys like that, mostly the political types. And I've made this joke before that are, my fake stories are fake to you, but your fake stories are real. And it's basically comes down to the reality tunnels and those levels of belief we're willing to sort of accept as faith as part of it. And I don't mean fake, once again, not to be blasphemous or disrespectful, but you get what I mean, is that we constantly do this to each other and discount things that other people believe as universal truths of their own reality tunnels. which again is a breakdown in communication. It's a probably an ancient psyop back to the Tower of Babel style, where it's how would you even describe that we're supposed to hate each other based on belief and reality tunnels and dogma cycles and all the rest. I don't know. Anyway, I could go on forever because I'm a blabbermouth, but you get what I mean. We'll get to the bicameral mind tonight too, because it's a fascinating aspect of this and it ties in very, very well. What do you guys think? What happened to the old gods? How come we can't communicate with them? Is there a silence protocol as I'm describing? And why did we stop hearing the gods of yore? Love to hear your thoughts at 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. Let's go to Shane, the blind psychonaut. What's up, brother? Welcome to the joint. How you doing tonight? Just to unmute, and you're on Troubled Minds, and go right ahead.
I'm good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. No complaints out of me. Doing living the dream, talking wild ideas by dark of night with my very smart friends. What you got for us tonight, my man?
Well, that's what's up. Well, you asked the question, is this manufactured? And I want to go down kind of go down the road of like, yeah. And the reason why I'm saying that, especially in like modern times, is that especially our pineal gland, from what I've read, and don't know how much of it's true or not, but in World War II, the Nazis, I don't know if they invented the fluoride, but from what I read, they used it, and they saw how it made their people docile. And I think one of the side effects later on that found out that our government found out is that it what's the word I'm trying to it blocks our pineal gland. And from what I've learned, our pineal gland is, and you even said it is in the write-up too, is that it's basically our antenna that can hear those entities, and if it's calcified or blocked, whatever the way you want to call it, obviously you're not going to be able to hear it. And it just seems weird to me that, like, if you go to the dentist, they tell you to spit out the fluoride. Even like on your toothpaste that has fluoride in it, spit it out, but yet it's in our water, our drinking water.
Yep.
Like, that seems kind of weird to me. I don't know, like, what's up with that? Is on one end they say don't consume it, but then on the other end it's in the water that we, or some people, consume. So I do think it's partially manufactured. And then, like, again, in modern times, we have so much gadgets and devices that have their own frequencies. But to kind of answer your other question, I think is the old gods or those entities, they might be, trying to communicate with us, or even like screaming at us like, yo, I'm trying to tell you this, or you guys need to do this. But there's so much interference with all the, the wireless internet and the frequencies from the billions of gadgets, phones, computers, etc., that it might interfere with them coming across to us. And I think they still can communicate with us, but that's when we are sleeping and dreaming, and we're in the theta delta brainwave. But while we are awake, we aren't in that brainwave. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. Okay, so my question for you is, as part of that, and I love your line of reasoning there and your logic. I think it fits, of course, very well into the conversation. So, do you think these ancient gods are still here? You think we can still communicate with them somehow in some way? And if it's been sort of washed out of history intentionally, and very good stuff with that, the fluoride is a neurotoxin, which again, like that's one of those wild conspiracy theories that if you said this 10 years ago, people would look at you like you were insane. But now suddenly it's really been justified, and they're starting to remove it from the water in a lot of cases because it doesn't give you any actual benefit. As they say, right? As the conspiracy theorist mind would say, nobody's ever died from a lack of fluoride. So why on God's green earth are they putting it in the damn water? And once again, this is the type of thing that makes us suspicious of what the knuckleheads that run the joint are up to. So yes, absolutely. Back to the gods themselves. If we can't communicate with them, what happens? You think they detach and are like, screw it, I'm going to go somewhere where I get attention. What do you think happens to them? And can we reconnect?
Like I said, I think they are still trying to connect with us. I mean, the past, I don't know, since I noticed 2012, there's been a influx of people saying they've been communicating with entities, or even through their dreams or abductions. I think that's the way that, if you want to call them past gods or those entities, whatever you want to put a title on them as, that they're still trying to reach out to us. Now, how many of those people are full of BS? I mean, probably a good amount of them, but there's still a huge influx that I've noticed that people are saying, I'm communicating with Zoran or whatever, but I do think they are still trying to communicate. Now, I don't know obviously I have no clue what happens if we just completely ignore them, but it might be a different story if it was like a purposefully done, like if I chose purposely to ignore it. On the other hand, if it, like, the whole fluoride thing is like, could be done to us unwillingly and unknowingly, now they might still stay around and try to communicate with us, because we're not choosing to ignore them. It's being done to us.
Yes, and I have a theory too on what happens if we could completely forget the old gods. My 30-second theory is this. 30-second theory is that because we forget where we came from, we cannot connect to the future in a human way. And we start worshiping false gods, the technocrats, the entities without souls that we now call non-human intelligence. I think that's where this leads.
You mean like an AI god? Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Fractals of them. And everybody chooses their own and has it in their pocket, and that becomes a new worship. Yep.
I agree with that. Now, I also do think that this frequency war that you were talking about, it's kind of, and it still goes along with like the fluoride and the influx of, buy the newest phone, or if you don't have this gadget or this whatever, like, people kind of look down on you or even make fun of you. I think that's a purposely done, weaponized thing that those, I don't know, you want to call it the rich people, the people that want to keep us in line, if you will, have done. Because, I mean, yeah, to me, it's crazy. Like, everyone wants the newest, not everyone, but you know what I mean? Like, wants the newest iPhone or the newest Galaxy phone. But a lot of people don't even know exactly what those phones are capable of. Like, if you told someone 5-10 years ago that they can wirelessly turn on your phone and listen to you, they're like, you're crazy. But we know that's what can happen, and they can pump out frequencies through those devices and interfere with you on a daily basis, make you maybe feel a certain way, sad, happy, angry, even I even read that there's a push on them trying to sell things in our dreams now, like send frequencies through like our devices or even our wireless internet, that they can piggyback the frequency with a certain message on it. Like when you're sleeping, it like integrates into your dream, and they can send a message to you, which is invasive as all heck. But I mean, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, exactly. Back to the old making a list, checking it twice. It's not Santa Claus anymore. Now it's Palantir. Congratulations. Strap in. the world is becoming a stranger and stranger place. By the way, the Stranger Things trailer just hit a couple days ago. Shout out to Night Stalker for pointing that out to me. It looks good. It looks good. Looking forward to that. A 3-part release, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. Yeah. Wild stuff. We got a call behind you. We got to get to. You're the best. If you want to sit and wait, you're definitely welcome, and we can bring you back later. You tell me. You're the best, brother. Appreciate you very much.
No, that's about all the rambling I got tonight. I'll just listen to everyone else.
Right on. You were the best. Appreciate you. Thanks for being part of this, and thanks for caring about the conversations, and thanks for bringing the fire with you every time you show up. Always a pleasure, my man.
All right, have a good night.
You too. Take care. You know me, love him. The Blind Psychonaut. That's Shane. Go check out his YouTube channel, troubledminds.org/friends. Scroll down a little bit. It says follow Shane here, as well as it should. It's alphabetical, so don't get mad if you got to scroll a little bit more. Alphabetical Shane is S. Go check out his YouTube channel, and please follow our friends. It's completely free to follow Shane. Go leave him a nice comment on his YouTube channel. I know some of you have. Please, please, please help our friends. The whole point of this is to make connections, make friends, talk about wild ideas, and share the work that we're doing together. Not just me. Remember, it's not a troubled mind. It is Troubled Minds Radio. Shane, you're the best. Go give him a follow. If you're not doing it at this point and you've been listening for a while, you're hurting my feelings. Go follow Shane. troubledminds.org/friends. And 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Hang tight, James. We had Theo waiting for quite some time now. Let's go to Theo in Philly. What's up, my man? You're on Troubled Minds. How are you, sir? Go right ahead.
Oh, hey, what's up? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir. Coming through loud and clear.
All right, great. Yeah, interesting topic. A bunch of great callers, definitely love the Blind Psychonaut as well as James and everybody else.
Thank you. I agree. What you got?
So basically, I just kind of wanted to talk about the idea of when we stopped hearing the gods and how we stopped hearing the gods. And I'm probably about to say a bunch of kind of trite nonsense, but I think it is actually when we stopped connecting with nature. And I was actually talking to the Rumble chat earlier, specifically about one of my memories from back in the day. And this was when I was a camp counselor in Maryland. And I don't know how to describe this, but we had this activity where we were quite close to a swamp. And, most of the swamp, it was kind of watery and whatnot. But, I was a film director there, and when there were days that were not windy, we could occasionally go on this activity called swamp mucking, where you 2 camp counselors with 6 kids, because we always had to have a 1-to-3 lifeguarding ratio. And even though we were going to the swamp, it wasn't really swimming. We still had to maintain that lifeguarding ratio. But one of the days, I had to take this kid who had a little bit of the autism. Well, he just had autism. He was just autism. Good kid, but he just kids never kind of know how they're going to react to new situations when they have the autism. Nothing wrong with that. But he was probably 7 or 8 at the time, and he signed up for the activity to So basically, like, we kind of like have to walk down from the woods, going through like kind of like a downward trail into the swamp, where like kind of like mostly watery at first, and you're just kind of like wading through probably like thigh-high swamp. So it's like it's watery swamp. There's definitely like like little branches and stuff, and just kind of like undergrowth in the way. But the entire point is that you are eventually wading into the muck pit. And the muck pit's the fun part. It's just, like the part of the swamp where the vegetation is kind of correct, where it's just like, like turns into like this beautiful sort of mud. And I understand this is kind of a weird thing to like enjoy, but like kids love it. You just like can jump into the mud. And it's just very thick mud. You like throw it in together. The kids love it and whatnot. But the entire time I was like, we were going down there, this kid that like had like a little bit of the autism. He was just like, "Oh my God, I'm so scared," He's just like was scared, and like eventually he like had to get on my back, and he was just saying into my ear, "It's like, why did God make such an awful place?" And it's just like Dan, or his name was Dan or Denison, whatever. But I was like, "Hey, God didn't actually make an awful place. It's just a different place that you have to learn how to appreciate, But we were walking until we got to the actual muck pit, and I was like, "Ben, check it out. Like, everyone else is enjoying it, It's like, it seems like gross and stupid at first, but it's just, another place that God created, and if you can interpret it correctly, you'll enjoy it, So, I don't know. At the end of the day, like, we all had, like, a great time in the muck pit, like, throwing muck at each other, and just, it sounds so stupid when I recollect it right now, but it's just about kind of, like, getting back in touch with nature. There's nothing inherently gross about it. It's actually kind of cool, Like, we can all have fun in this natural environment, and, I don't know, it sounds stupid when I recollect it, but like it was such a good time, Like all the kids just enjoying each other in the stupid muck pit. Like, who cares?
Yeah, well said. And thanks for filling in the swamp comment over there on Rumble as well. Because I mean, it is. I think you're right. That's what this is all about, and that's why it's important to talk about these things. Because look, we absolutely cannot forget where we came from, and that's again one of the core tenets of what I've always been talking about here. And even in a time of AI acceleration and the singularity, all this stuff, if we forget where we came from, then what we become is not human at all. Which, hey, not on my watch. Absolutely not on my watch. Got about a minute and a half left. If you got a poem for us, my man, or if you don't, that's okay too.
No, I have no poems. I did not get one off, but yeah, no, I just like wanted to like say everyone should just like embrace the swamp, embrace like nature around you, just don't be afraid to just like get a little bit down and dirty, just because I don't know, like that's the way life is supposed to be, like don't be afraid to be outside in the rain, like don't be afraid to get your shoes muddy. I think that a lot of times we do get a little bit too comfortable being very clean and pristine in our air-conditioned household sometimes, and that's not the way that we evolved, like we evolved to like go through random swamps, and I'm a swamp enthusiast, like not like DC swamp, but like, just I love swamps. Like, it's good to get bit by bugs occasionally, and it's good to like go get like torn up in the brambles and like the woods, like I don't know. Don't take life too easy. Enjoy nature. So yeah.
Amen. Appreciate the call. Thanks for listening. Always a pleasure. Keep up the fire chat over on Rumble. Appreciate you very much.
Toodle.
Have a great night. Theo and Philly, you know him, you love him, the official poet of Troubled Minds, and a dear friend for a long time, and all of the wild ideas. And I'll say it myself. Sometimes you just want to roll around in the mud. And I think that's a very, very natural feeling. Love to hear your thoughts on this. 702-957-1037. The Silence Protocol. Why we stopped hearing the gods. Be right back. More on the way. We got Derek the Night Stalker, more from James and your calls as well. Don't go anywhere. Back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, DLive, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 FM Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, we're taking your calls. I'm calling this the Silence Protocol. Why we stopped hearing the gods. And I'm not talking about modern gods. I'm talking about the pantheons of old. Where we came from. How come all these different places the world over, from the Legends and Lore D&D manual, all these individuals, let's go Ishtar. Let's go with the goddess Ishtar for a moment. What happened to her? We communed with her. She taught us the ways of love and war. She taught us agriculture and all manner of things. And yet, these ancient entities that were central to life of our ancestors are gone. Relegated to storybooks and role-playing games. And I wonder, is it possible to commune with them in some way? Yet. That's the question. Yeah, love to hear your thoughts. A lot of ideas tonight and a lot of ways to look at it. As usual, non-linear, open-ended, and that's why we talk about these ideas together. Shout out Drew in the chat. I see you, buddy. And yeah, it's complicated. And I do like to say that. And it really is. So how do you feel about it? One more time. 702-957-1037. James, anything to add real quick? And we got Derek on the line.
For my show, my Salcedo Paranormal, I'm always looking online for stories of anomalous experiences, and they happen all the time. So I'm not arguing with anybody so far, because I do think everything that they've said, makes sense with all the technology affecting things and the chemicals and all those things. But at the same time, there's still people having anomalous experiences, and in many cases, even though I don't share all of them, having experiences with what they believe to be figures in mythology or ancient religions around the world. So it's not that it's not happening at all. I just think a lot of times we just don't hear about it unless you're like me and you're weird and you're looking for them out there online. So just wanted to point that out. Again, like I said, not that I'm arguing with anybody, just pointing out that multiple things I think can be true at the same time.
And you're not the only weirdo, so you're in good company. Yeah, fire take. Love that. Love to hear your thoughts as well, guys. What do you think? 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubleminds.org. Let's go to Derek in Massachusetts, the Night Stalker. We'll skip the music because he's on the phone line. What's going on, my man? Thanks for being patient and then hopping through the technologies and whatnot. How are you, sir? Go right ahead.
What's going on, Britters? Great calls, great show. Yeah, it's a weird one. Sorry for any popping and everything in advance. I saw the popping comments right before I called in. I'm like, oh damn, here we go.
No, it's not you. That's it's completely me. You sound fine. So all that the popping that's happening, it's a new audio driver of the Rode thing that they expanded. Trust me, I know exactly what it is. I know exactly how to fix it. I just have to roll it back. I just haven't had time. So it's completely not you. Anyway, no need to feel worried about that. It's completely me. Go ahead, sir.
But yeah, wild show. I keep this in a few different ways. I'm gonna be kind of rambling, so just hop in whenever. First, I'm all about the idea that the time of the old gods that kind of ended at some point, and that's kind of one of the impetuses of the whole Titans stuff is that not only in like Lord of the Rings and different kind of pop culture and stories and everything, that the age of man kind of started in the age of magic or the age of elves or the age of monsters or the age of the old gods, yada yada, had a clear end point, like the demarcation point. And like Buffy, that's when they cast out the ancient gods, which is the same as Lovecraft when they cast out the old gods and stuff. The end of the time of magic, the age of technology, yada yada. There was a time when the realms mingled much more than they were. Potentially, there was like no veil even. And then at some point, there was whether it be like some kind of ascended masters created some kind of weird like veil firmament type of thing that keeps everything else out to kind of protect us because we were being just onslaught by different creatures from everywhere, or who knows what. But I love that idea. Just based on what James was talking about, before I forget it, I was listening to Grant Morrison talk about doing ritual magic, and he's the comic guy I brought up like last week, whatever, talking about he had his Alien 5D experience. But he's him and Alan Moore are the two famous like occult magician comic writers, legendary, and like his Superman is what the Superman in July is going to be based on. His All-Star Superman. It's a huge deal. But he talks about ritual magic in a really interesting way, where he says that, like, we talked about this before too, but that the gods are modern pantheon and stuff. So he explains kind of when you're doing a ritual that this energy is all around us all the time. So say if you want, so sometimes he'll like do a ritual to the Flash, but it's the same as doing a ritual to Hermes or to Mercury or any of these like speed messenger gods of ancient times. The same way if you were to do it with like Zeus and Superman and Odin or like these all-father figures, something like that. There's a kind of a similarity in energy. And when you do a ritual, basically what you're doing is clearing the room of anything besides this energy, so it can like so you can kind of hear it, you can kind of come through you, whatever. And he said you can do this all kind of crazy ways. Like it kind of resonated with me because if I know I'm going to have a busy night that night, I will wear like my Flash shirt or whatever because I think it's going to give me a little boost. Like I can go a little extra fast. And he talks about it in a way like, yeah, that's basically it. Like if you drink an energy drink and then kind of venerate Flash, you could get like an extra surge of inspiration, like capital I inspiration kind of, in the form of like moving fast or in the form of communication with Hermes or Mercury or Flash or yada yada. That it's kind of like these energies are coursing all around us all the time. You have to kind of quiet everything else out and just, he explains it as he's leaving one energy left in the room. So it's just you and the Flash energy, or you and the Hermes energy, or you and the Crowley case Lamb energy and stuff. And I think he did all the Crowley and things. So I'm going to toss that out there. That maybe we're just like, people are kind of focused on the Holy Spirit and kind of forgetting about Odin, kind of forgetting about these pantheons and stuff. That we're only hearing one frequency, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Almost intentionally, it feels like. And again, back to some of the the frequency wars and that type of stuff. Like, I wonder how deep that stuff really does go, and how much sort of not just our dream realm, dream state is affected by all the electromagnetics and all the stuff we're dealing with, because it's as yet unquantified. It's sort of the dream realm is that wild west of human consciousness, because you can kind of do the psychoanalysis bit of a dream, but even that's more like finger painting yet. It's just so sloppy and based on some other stuff that might make some sense sometimes, but what does it really mean? I guess we'll know when we're able to download 4K dreams from our Neuralinks. So hang tight for that. That's coming soon to a lifetime near you. But yeah, all that makes a ton of sense to me, and I think you're spot on. Go ahead. What else you got?
As far as kind of just real quick, like with the modern contact or being able to hear these voices and stuff, I think since this kind of like I don't believe that this veil creation or this kind of cast, like the age of man or the end of the age of monsters or the end of the age of the old gods, is like at the start of the Abrahamic like domination of the planet, kind of like but it does kind of when I explain it, if I'm gonna like talk about it in the conspiracy sense, and usually the kind of the rituals that are being done by the elites kind of have the vibe that they're kind of like trying to end to the Abrahamic age and bring in this age of old gods. So it kind of makes you think of Baal or Moloch and that type of stuff. There's these kind of just things that were these bestial kind of gods that were worshipped prior. And that kind of makes sense for the ritual, and it makes sense to explain it. But I think the way I see it in my mind's eye, these are like much more Lovecraftian, much more to the time of antiquity, like way beyond human even memory, kind of just these like things that are cast out of reality in any sense, that we forget these names, or like impronounceable names that we can't even like say with our human tongues, and that type of crazy trippy stuff and everything. So I think maybe at that time, which could have been Neanderthal days, it could have been when you talk about with the bicameral mind type of deal, that at some point we did not have an inner monologue, and not in like an NPC way where some people are walking around with no inner monologues, which is a weird trippy thing, but in a way that like when we are talking to ourselves in our mind, at some point during human history, we perceive that as a third person, a god or an angel or some kind of heavenly message that we couldn't differentiate the two. And that could have been even in our visual world, where we, like the way babies can't kind of separate shapes, and why peekaboo works, and why they really think you disappear when you put your hands over your face and stuff. That at some point the human mind kind of visualized the world that way. So the time of monsters might be, and I like the idea that it's a literal time of monsters, but also could be a time where everything we saw was a monster, just because that's how our brain developed. You know, but I like the idea that there was kind of a veil, a time of the old gods. Things were cast out. That could be kind of a Ark of the Covenant type of deal, or the Covenant as in like a deal, kind of like all the global Atlantean, just like so to speak, kind of this global maritime civilization of these ascended masters created these global frameworks and structures on the Earth grid and cast out everything else and created this crazy veil, or whatever the case may be. But I think we've had limited contact for all of like human history that we remember. So everything we learned about in school, like Egyptians, Romans, Greece, they have a limited contact. It's not like everyone's a phone. It's that we still have like the Oracle of Delphi. You still have to go to the pyramids and go to these chambers. That there was an infrastructure of communication technology in the form of these sacred sites and stuff. And there was still priest classes. There was still like methods to make communication that we've been kind of trying, that we were less focused on that in regular everyday life. And seemingly our ancient history that we can see and we remember was obsessed with trying to make communication, but it still is like a trying to. It's still a practice. It's still protocols and rules, and this way might work. This way might work. Have you tried this? Did it work for you? No, we'll try this. Like, let me see this. Or like the secret society is sharing protocols and stuff. It seems like one of the connective tissues with human history is like we're trying to get that contact back we had way before, you know, way before, like I'm talking like way before, a time we can't remember, you know, like the first age, if we're talking Lord of the Rings type of deal. I'm rambling, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I like it. Meaning that, let's say that the primordial human consciousness, or the antenna, however we connected to that, was basically using, let's call them sort of the Rorschach test level of gods. They were sort of like you described, more Lovecraftian, because we were not yet evolved ourselves, and so we were worshiping a more primal force. And so maybe that has passed, and we're done with it, and maybe we'll never go back to it as part of just part of the conceptual thought here, and maybe we're not supposed to. So who knows? I think that's a fantastic way to look at it. Again, to kind of modern looking, without saying, you know, well, here we go, we're going to just worship the AI priesthood. Strap in, you know, your AI gods in your pocket now, because that's where this seems to lead for me. But I do wonder if there's sort of a happy medium between the two, as usual, right? Because the good and the evil and all the rest of the void and the light, all the stuff is one way to frame it, but sort of everything else requires nuance. And I think you're bringing it tonight, and thank you for that.
Yeah, I just saying that, it makes me think about kind of just the biblical fall, or kind of the new agey idea that there was a time when like even the idea that the pyramids were created in 5D and then they just appeared in 3D, that we were like the ancient Atlantean style type of like a consciousness ability. We were living in realms higher and lower, and that we had a kind of a biblical fall, like a calcification, a crystallization into the 3D plane. And now we're trying to make our way back up into the 4D, 5D plane, where we had more of a ethereal, spiritual, build in the 5D to manifest it in the 3D type of thing. And that fall could have been what's happening when we lost the ability to hear, when we got stuck into this one meat realm, this meat prison, you know, eventually. But there still is kind of modern context. And I asked the AI just to give me random ones real quick. I'm just going to read them off if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. Quick. What you got?
Yeah. So there's George Washington's vision during the American Revolution. I asked him to give like modern visions and contact and hallucinations and psychedelic and religious experiences and stuff that impacted modern history, and that there's still kind of whispers from the gods that are working its way through, like Shane was saying, through visions and through altered states is kind of the most, like the catch-all term I guess you could use, and that's still affecting history. So Washington had a message from God, which he believed was a sign of divine intervention, and affected like when he wanted to go to battle and stuff. John Dee we talked about before. William Branham's visions, the Christian faith healer and prophet, received visions and later influencing different branches of Christianity. Steve Jobs had a psychedelic experience and then created Apple, which obviously affected us. The visions of Ellen G. White, had visions and founded Seventh-day Adventist Church. The near-death experience of Dannion Brinkley had a near-death experience in 1975 that led him to become a best-selling author, sharing his experiences and insights to millions. McKenna's shamanic experiences, Terence McKenna, the visions of Joseph Smith, Creighton Mormonism, the mystical experiences of Aldous Huxley, which he described in The Doors of Perception, which like went on to influence how we view human consciousness. The prophetic dreams of Edgar Casey, which kind of ties into the John Dee thing. The visions of Mother Teresa, the shamanic experiences of Carlos Castaneda, which people reference all the time in these communities. The near-death experiences of Eben Alexander. He's a neurosurgeon. His near-death experiences in 2008 led him to write about his experiences and challenge the materialistic views of consciousness. The mystical experiences of Ram Dass, Ram Dass will be here now, and really brought like Eastern thinking to the West in the 60s in a major way. The visions of Emanuel Swedenborg, who visions like flourished Eastern or Christian esotericism, yada yada. There's a few more, but essentially, like maybe this is just how it looks. Maybe we think about history in kind of a way where they were like obsessed with talking to the gods. They were obsessed with the gods and everything. But we're not looking at it in a kind of day-to-day life type of deal. And if it's a vision scenario where we're looking back 2,000 years from now, and we're looking back at America, our government buildings, our structures are they look like ancient Egypt. They look like ancient Greece and ancient Rome and stuff. We have the apotheosis of Washington. Our modern day government temples have all kind of paintings with Washington touching angels' hands and stuff. And apotheosis means to become a god. And we see that, we feel like we're not as connected as the past because we think we visualize the past in this way, but in the future, maybe there is no disconnect. And it's just how it looks like. Little dreams, little visions from the priest class and the elite classes that moves wars, moves like political agendas, moves pop culture, obviously. We talk about the different kind of aliens and things that are coming into pop culture via dreams, like the aliens, and Spielberg making E.T., James Cameron making Avatar. These things are all from dreams, from visions. Maybe there's other methods that the gods are using in order to like paint the world that they want via the human paintbrush. What do you think?
Yeah, well said. All that. There's a couple times referenced in the write-up Philip K. Dick, and as if
exactly.
he was able to kind of tap into that somehow, some way, past sort of his modern zeitgeist, which was late 70s, early 80s, as he was kind of coming into that end time of his life. That was, I don't know, like magical, like again, some people say he was fueled up on all manner of weird substances, and other people say he was tapped into something. And I wonder, as usual, right, that he's like creating
probably both.
The heroic dose of the shamanic journey, probably both. Which there's a big drama in to do regarding the Jake Barber and the Skywatcher stuff in the UFO space. If you're watching that, I'll give you the 30-second version because I don't want to rob your time here. Yep. But basically, there's a guy that was supposedly a psychic, one of the psionic people that was doing the summoning of the UFOs. Shane, what's his name? Frains. I don't know. I'm following him on X, but basically he was hinting that he knew the identity of the real psychic. Turns out he was the actual psychic. And now he's like accusing them of being dishonest about a ton of things, criminals and drug addicts. And it's blown up over X over the last 48 hours maybe. And I'm reading this like eating popcorn, that Michael Jackson meme. I'm just like, oh no, here we go. Like now we have the falling out between the CE5 guys that are not really CE5, but they're sort of saying they're CE5, and then the guy that was summoning the things. Anyway, we'll get back to it at some point. We'll get Jeremy McGowan on, and we'll probably cover that. But there's a lot going on in that space. That is, like I said, I don't want to take your time, but it's strange, and it's also a little troubling that we kind of find ourselves again combating each other in sort of that spiritual space. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, exactly, and just like that makes the summoning UFOs makes me nervous in general. Summoning UFOs on drugs really makes me nervous, and that's how you get possessed. Calling something in when you're in an altered state. That's how you get possessed. But even without the drugs, they are still getting in an altered state. The CE5 stuff, it's meditation to alter your state. That's what you're doing with the orb summoner, the quote unquote orb summoners that Nap wrote about. It's to change your, get into a zone, a vibe of gratitude. It's to change the way your consciousness is, and brings these things in. The Oracle of Delphi is to be over that kind of steam or whatever in 300. It's just to change your altered state. All these different temples, like even like ancient Christianity, like they still do it in like modern Catholicism. They come down with the smoke and like go up and down the aisles with the smoke. It used to be cannabis. It used to have like the altered state aspect of it used to be baked into all these mythologies and stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that it's still not, it's in the modern version of it too. I'm just gonna try to run through these notes real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So. So just put one thing up to what Matt was talking about with the grounding and everything. There's some conspiracy theories and stuff that talk about they're trying to take that away from us too by putting the electricity, all our wires, like underneath the ground, and then also like sewage. They're running, like water has all this memory. They're running dirty, like poop water through the ground too, and they're trying to mess up our grounding. And to like how I mentioned this in the chat, but how we kind of visualize the ancients as having a more immediate connection with the gods. For all we know, that's how they're going to glorify us. People are going to find our sneakers, our Nike sneakers in the future. Look at the soles, see all these like, oh, they fused in sacred geometry and these weird kind of frequency shapes into the soles of their shoes, so they can like amplify the grounding or whatever. That there might be an element of like hype that we're kind of putting into it, whatever. But there was like an infrastructure of contact modalities with like Stonehenge and the pyramids and these different sacred sites. But it could have been like you said, you don't want to step on anybody's toes, but there could be an intentional cutoff via the priest classes. That doesn't mean like modern day Christianity. That means all of the priest classes. That you have to, priest classes in and of themselves. It's if you want to talk to God, you have to come to us. That's kind of they're the gatekeepers for the voice of any kind of God and any pantheon throughout all the histories that we know about. But also the intention is obviously super important. If these gods feed off attention, they're fighting for our attention. The attention could have been hijacked potentially. So our attention is being hijacked by technology and by just distractions all the time right now. But it could have been hijacked just by the Abrahamic religion. It could have been hijacked by. I mean, the first commandment is "Thou shalt have no god before me." The most important thing, number one rule, is only give me the attention. Don't give any of these other gods attention. Like, the thing is, I'm the only. It's not I'm the only god. It's that you should have no gods before me. Like, you can worship other stuff, but I'm the guy. Give me your first attention. And then the conduits, the people that would have been called shamans or would have been taken to become the Oracle of Delphi, even though there might have been a gift and a curse a little bit for her, have now been like called crazy. And now rather than believed to see they have this, said that they have the sight, now they're being tossed in a nut house, or the darker MK Ultra stuff they're being used. They're locked in some basement somewhere, being used to be a phone to the other side by a secret priest class of who knows who's running that, you know.
That was the term I was looking for, by the way. In the first half of the show, I was fumbling with that term. I was looking for priest class. That's what I kept trying to say when I was like technocrats or whatever. That's exactly the term I was looking for. So thank you. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So just like all the conduits. Like, I still think that there was a time. It could have been the bicameral mind, or could have just been pre-veil, or those could have been the same for all we know, where contact was more immediate, and that could have been before the metaphorical fall or literal fall or whatever. And then there was a time when the conduits were considered sacred, when if you had the sight, you would be brought in to become a shaman at a young age, or brought into the priest class. And now if you're a conduit, you're a phone to the other side, they put those phones on silent mode, and you got to shut up about it. You're thrown into a jail cell, you're thrown into a nut house. So, and that encourages generations to not speak up about it. So we've just put everything. We put our phones on vibrate. And to what Matt was talking about the architecture and stuff. All the architecture of the cathedrals and everything had the same resonant goal and frequency as like the pyramids and as the ancient mounds and as these things that just look like holes in the ground, essentially, that have the same function and purpose and frequency and have the same end result as these huge, massive, palatial, gigantic cathedrals and everything that we can't even, that the whole Tartaria movement is based around. We can't even wrap our minds around that we built it, because it's so ridiculous. But the kind of the fall of that, the kind of the moving away from that architecture, like the classic meme of McDonald's in the 90s looking like a playhouse, and then McDonald's now being this gray black cube, maybe it got me thinking like the squaring of everything. And if it was kind of a Abrahamic intentional first commandment, only pay attention to me. There's a lot of black cubes in the Abrahamic religions. The cross itself, when folded up, creates a cube. A cross is laid out, is a two-dimensional cube laid out. I don't know. I find that interesting. There's a kind of a Saturnian cubification of things that maybe is this kind of prison matrix that we've been put in to not hear the voice of higher powers and everything. But that's basically all I got. Sorry for rambling. Hope you can hear me.
No rambles at all. I hear you loud and clear. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for the call. Always a pleasure.
How you calling on the phone? I feel like I'm just a delay and everything. But great stuff, you guys. Awesome show.
Appreciate you. Have a great night. You know me, love him. Derek the Night Stalker. Of course, give him a follow. You know where to find him. TroubledMinds.org/friends. And follow Derek. It's as simple as that. It says actually follow Night Stalker under N. And as usual, he's onto something. What do you guys think? We're talking, again, the silence protocol. Why we stopped hearing the gods. Love to hear your thoughts. Be right back. We got Kelly on the way. Thanks for being patient. You got as much time as you need. Be right back. More Troubled Minds coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. Yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. All the places, all the things you already know. If you're still here into the third hour, you know exactly what's going on. Please help our friends. TroubledMinds.org/friends. Tonight, we're talking the silence protocol, I'm calling this. Why we stopped hearing the gods. And I'm talking about the old gods. Now, recognize there is a distinction, as Derek the Night Stalker made a very firm distinction there. And I think it's incredibly important to consider that as our, let's say, human mind evolves, develops, that maybe those distinctions will continue to change. And maybe, I don't know, maybe the bad taste in our mouth of the priest class of 2025 is fine. or maybe not. Or maybe not. I don't really know. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Thanks again for being patient on the phone line. And thanks for just being cool and chill in the chat. You guys are all the best. As you know, hang tight, James. We got Kelly waiting a very long time. Unless you got something to add real quick. He's been waiting for like 30 minutes or more.
Oh, no problem. Happy to wait.
Okay, stay right there. We're going to go to Kelly on the phone line. Kelly in Colorado. What's up, brother? Thanks for being patient, my man. You are on Troubled Minds. What do you got for us tonight? The silence protocol. Why did we stop hearing the gods of old? Welcome to the joint, man. How are you?
Good. How's it going, Michael? How you doing?
Pretty good. No complaints out of me. The Kelly energy bringing me back down to center and square. Thanks again for that and bringing it every time. What you got? There's a ton of stuff here. I know you got a lot in your back pocket, so go right ahead. Thanks for being patient, my man.
Good callers, good show, man. Yeah, I like everybody's ideas and thoughts.
Thank you.
For me, I just want to add some stuff to it. Like, for me, I don't really look at it as are we really not worshiping the old gods? You know, and they just change names. You know, they've changed names throughout the millennia. You know what I mean? From different places. You know, you can match them all up. You know, you can, like, for a lot of them, religions came at it from like Egypt, for example. You know, like Amun-Ra, that was known as Marduk, right? That's where he says you end your prayers, you know, by his name, which is Amen. You know, that's where that whole thing comes from. Like, you know, it's just sample, you know, examples like that, you know, throughout it. It's just changed throughout different names, throughout, you know, even like Greek, Roman, everything, you know. So who says we're not really doing it? You know, it's not this. People think it might have changed, but maybe it's the same. You know, it's just using different things now. You know what I'm saying? So, if you look at that, you know, Do you want to add something?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so, and then, like now, we have technology, right? And back then, someone brought up like with music and singing and stuff, right? Well, I believe that was even actually changed, that the frequency we should be listening to everything is 432, and they changed it all through the radio system. Anything that's being played now is 444. That's messing with, I would say like the earth angelic, frequency that's out there, that one's pure, like, it's supposed to be like pure love. But if they're changing, frequencies now, it just like every technology that goes, the higher they go, the more things are going to change. Our bodies are not adapted to all that. So we're getting kind of jacked up with all that, you know what I mean? And it kind of reminds me, like if you go back in the past, they started doing all that stuff in the old world, that, for instance, they were getting rid of those giant bells, destroying those things. There was times where people were burying some of those bells so they can save them, or like, in the Asian countries, they were like getting rid of those gongs, or drums. Native Americans, they were doing a lot of their dancing. That's what they did, a lot of dancing and stuff. And some of them here, they made it illegal, which was, called like the ghost dance. That was something that they came for. It's more like for peace and, the unity of the body and spirit, in the afterlife. But, they outlawed stuff like that too as well. And that was not only, just the dance itself, but like the whole ceremony that goes with it, with the rhythm of the drums. And then, you think about like what you guys, people talking about with like the priest class, right? And that's what was talked about, even through like the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, right? He was always talking about it like that, the priest class, because they were out. He was saying that he sent them out all throughout the world, to teach, the people around the world the same thing, with that. So I don't know, man, to say that we, probably for us not hearing it anymore, we're no longer grounded with the earth. You got everybody, they're trying to pack everybody in the cities, not like how they used to be, that. And, you got all that frequencies going on around you constantly, especially like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, stuff like that. We're going to be like blocked out from all those, maybe the frequencies we used to listen to while we were like out in nature and stuff like that.
Yeah, which is, I think, is the point of this. And as usual, right, there's the core message of these conversations is exactly that. We cannot forget where we came from. Put your toes in the dirt. Get rid of your fear of the worms and the whatnots, the muck. Shout out Theo. And I mean, like I said, we have that sort of penchant built into us where we want to just roll in the mud. And again, you could use that as a negative term or whatever, as I've heard it, kind of cast about, but it's grounding. It is grounding, and grounding is literally where we came from. We came from the dirt. We that's right. You cook it down and go back, a billion years or whatever. We are the dirt and a little stardust. But I mean, yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the truth though, we're from this planet. So, generations and generations, I don't know how far back, but we're still part of it. So, that's all going to be part of us. But at the same time, like I was, kind of bringing up that, you have all this stuff going on around you, right? And then someone brought up with someone was bringing up with like even the architecture. If you look at old architecture, they had no, like people were talking about, no corners. It wasn't like a block, right? It's kind of like when feng shui, if you look in feng shui, they call it poison arrows. And it's like 45-degree angles or a lot of angles, sharp angles like that, where it just cuts off, goes down, cuts off, goes up, right? And in the old you know, you look at the old temples or even the old majestic things around the world, you know, where some people like to call it Tartarian, but it's, you know, everything was all archways, you know, it's all like makes everything fluid and move around. It was just like, you know, I think it was Mattel, he was talking about, you know, that Parthenon, or not the Parthenon, but like the the theater, right? Yeah,
amphitheater.
Amphitheater.
Amphitheater. Yep.
And yeah, the amphitheater. So what, you know, that you just have to naturally talk, and everybody can hear you. Kind of like Teotihuacan, it was built the same way. Like down in Mexico, a lot of cities like that, you could, you know, they show examples, you know, see videos where they would clap their hands and you could hear it, like, you know, the temple's like, I don't know how many feet away, like 500 feet away or something, and they're slapping their hands, and it kind of sounds like a bird, you know what I mean, like the local bird that's around there. But it's the same purpose where you can just barely talk, and, you know, it amplifies it. So again, you know, like the ether, I'm pretty sure everything was used with that, just like the power or the frequency of the planet. That's why they were, you know, like the pyramids were finding, you know, those things were just big, giant. You need some power, something like that. You know what I mean? If we're using, maybe that's where they're trying to do with CERN. But, you know, if you're only just using CERN, maybe it's a new technology. They're using part of the power of the earth. You know what I mean? Drawing it from there, like they were doing with the pyramids, to open up something, or, you know, from heaven to earth, that whole thing. You know what I'm saying? But again, I don't know, man. For me, I try to say, that's why when our house we got now, we're on farmland. You know what I mean? We're away from all the stuff in the city or close to any kind of town. We, you know, no big towns around. Really, you have to drive a while to get there. That's what we're trying to do, man.
Oh yeah, ground the lifestyle. I mean, I think too, that's why we sort of have that. Not to be morbid here, but I don't. It's like the call back to where we came from, right? Like sort of we get a little older. There's the rat race, the hustle and the bustle, and then dealing with all the nonsense of a corporate world, and then, you know, I'm feeling it too. Like I said, I have this overwhelming desire to just go disappear into the desert and build something with my hands. It's I don't know, like I think it's definitely the place we need to be, but it's sad that it's not what we were doing when we were 20 or 25, or, you know, what our bodies were like, more kind of built to do those things. But hey, we're gonna do it anyway, aren't we? We're definitely gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So one thing I forgot to bring up, it was like, you know, you look at other people too. So like how these people could be listening to like the old gods or somehow. So, you know, you also hear stories of like the Vatican has this thing, and I think they had the government, I think it was called Looking Glass or something, right? Project Looking Glass. Or that was one of the Vatican things where they were supposed to be able to see in the future or the ancient past. You know what I mean? Maybe these devices or stuff like that. You know what I mean? That we're thinking that it was something else, but we if you look at it, you know what I mean? It's high technology, everything. So we got to look in a different direction, you know, if we really want to do it.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. So your contention here, and I kind of agree with you, actually. I mean, I can agree with lots of things. Many things can be true at the same time. Is that those old gods that we're talking about, sort of that silence protocol, we never really stopped worshiping them. We stopped recognizing that we were. Is that kind of what your point was?
Yeah, you know what I mean? They want to change it. You know what I mean? Now it's going to be digital. And I don't know, in the same premise, it's, you know, like if we're talking about energy and vibration, it's, you know, you're giving that into, you know, you're giving your like people spend days and hours on playing games, you know what I mean, on that type of stuff. I'm not against gamers, but you know what I mean, there's a limit to some of these guys. I've had friends, man, like in the Navy, some of these kids, man, that's all they had to do was in the barracks, you know, they would spend hours. And they would muster up, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, man, were you drinking last night? And they're like, no, I was out. You know, I was up all night playing, you know, whatever games there was. You know what I'm saying? So they're giving all your energy into something like that instead of, you know, what we should be using. out there. Not everybody, but a lot of people. But that's just the city life, you know what I mean? I'm not down in that either, but that type of stuff isn't for me, you know what I mean? I'm trying to move away from stuff like that.
Yeah, you know what's wild about that?
Personal.
Is sort of the fractal of it. Think about this. So you're in the military, and you're with dudes who stayed up all night. They weren't drinking, they were gaming. And what were they probably gaming? They were playing like Call of Duty or something, right? And so it's like the military guy simulating the military guy staying up all night that's affecting his life negatively as a military guy. I mean, you see the absurdity of the world we live in, and this is the point. This is that Billy Joel song, right? The waitress is practicing politics, and the businessman slow to get stoned. We have a place we belong, and I think simulating our simulation of the simulation of where we should be. Why don't we just be instead? How about that? I mean, goodness gracious.
Yeah, correct. All right, brother, that's all I got for tonight, man. I didn't have too much. I was just kind of wanted to throw that in there a little bit. Like I said, everybody had some good calls tonight, and you guys have a good evening.
You're the best, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for being patient and hanging in there. And tell Michelle we said hi. Good luck getting all the move fixed up, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great one.
All right, man. You too. Have a good one.
Thank you. Kelly in Colorado. There you go. And that's why we do this. He's literally the first guy that called and called back, and he's been such an amazing friend ever since. And looking at all the things in all the ways, which is the whole point of these conversations. So thank you for that phone call. Love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you guys think? We're talking the silence protocol, I'm calling it. Why we stopped hearing the gods. I don't mean modern. I mean the old gods. Was it intentional? Back to the feng shui bit, I think there's probably something there. The cathedrals, the cubicles, probably something there. I think our actual inability to connect with nature, probably something there. So the question really becomes, is it manufactured? Or is it sort of the accidental aspect of just modern technology kind of dragging us to that space? I don't really know. James, you've been patient for a long time. I've let some calls get in here. Anything you got on any of that? I got tons of stuff to get to, of course, as you know me, but giving you some space to get back in here if you need it. Welcome back to the joint.
Oh, no problem. I'll take this 10 minutes and the next 30. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, great calls from Derek and Kelly. It's sort of ironic in a way because I do wonder about that sort of call back to nature or that pull to nature, because I wonder, is it bad for people that don't have that? Is that necessarily, not that I'm saying that you were all saying that, I'm just thinking, is that necessarily a bad thing? I'm thinking of in my case, everything I like to do, all my work, everything I like to do for entertainment, it's involves being close enough to resources I can get to fairly easily, and it involves my computer. That's of course my situation because of my low vision, but still. So I just wonder about that. If there's, again, is all the technology and everything necessarily all as bad as other people out there might say it is? Not us. I'm just saying other people, in society and whatever. I don't think so directly. It is the people that are running everything that will use the technology against us to make it bad.
Yeah, the bottlenecks, the priest classes, all the stuff.
Yeah,
which cause, once again, there's, as usual, there's a backlash to that. There's always a backlash to that. There's the 1776. There's the French Revolution. I mean, on the bourgeoisie and the French stuff, and not French, the Russian stuff that goes into the Rasputin bit. I mean, it's literally like cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle of you mistreat the people. And get FAFO, have they not learned this? It's like, come on now, like you're at the top of the world, and you continue and dare to want more. Really, there's a lot of people out there that need a little bit of help, and a lot of ways we can make it happen with modern technology. So this is, again, slow down. This is not a call to violence in any capacity whatsoever, because I know the detractors will trim me and whatever, which thank God we don't have a ton of detractors. And I think, by the way, too, the reason why that is is because I don't spend an inordinate amount of time going after people, calling people liars and charlatans and grifters. And there's a lot of people that do that, like to hype the drama. But I mean, whatever. Violence is not good. But I'm saying if you mismanage so poorly that becomes the only option, that becomes the only option. Copy that, Herschel. Thank you. So we'll go to Herschel at the bottom of the hour. Yeah, I mean, go ahead, James. Anything on that? I got some stuff to get to, of course, but complicated, interesting, wild, the old gods, same as the new gods, as Derek always says, meet the new gods, same as the old gods. And this is the space we're dealing with. And it's, I want to say the word that comes to mind is unfortunate, but I don't know. Maybe it's the opposite of that. And maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. What you got?
I would just agree with what Kelly was saying, which is that that focus on an other outside of ourselves and outside of the physical world. I don't think it's ever really stopped. Not completely. I don't think it ever will completely stop. Even with all the AI, even with all technology, I don't even think it's possible for it to stop, because I don't think that anomalous events, anomalous phenomenon will ever completely stop. I just can't imagine that happening. I could be wrong, but there's reports throughout time of people having weird experiences that they can't explain from as far back as you want to go to now. So why wouldn't it go on into the future? So yeah, I think that there will always be people that focus on that, even if it's only focusing in their mind, not even necessarily going into magical rituals, although that's a whole other fascinating topic, because I've heard shows I've listened to over the years, people talk about their own practices, and there doesn't seem to be two people that do things even within magical practices, rituals, ceremonies. They don't do everything the same way, or they don't do all the same things. They do what works well for them. They focus on the forces or the beings that work well with what they want to accomplish. So it is. I think it's still there, and I think it will always be there.
Welcome to 2025. a complicated place, chock full of technology. And I don't know, it's a strange thing too, to consider that we're supposed to sort of forget the old ways, but then it's also still being written about. I mean, look at, Thor and the MCU, right? The Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, Thor's still got the hammer, or what's the big thing called now? He's got the big whatever, right? Like, I mean, the larger hammer, and it's odd to me, but they're caricatures, cartoons of these old ideas. And I don't know, it also, I meant to bring this up earlier too as part of it, but I couldn't remember the name of the entity. Medjet, like the ancient, which when you were talking about sort of the entities that the egregores or the tulpas of this, actually, by the way, thank you for sending me this. So what you were talking about earlier is this is the thing that the one of the articles James sent when he was discussing this earlier. Legends of Myrtle's Plantation, the slave girl ghost story, and this is what you were describing, right? And so I couldn't remember the name, but I wanted to invoke it when you brought this up. It's Medjet. It's that primordial ghost, the primal ghost we've talked about in the past, that is now like this massive phenomenon. It's an ancient Egyptian thing that is incredibly obscure, but it's now massive in Japan, and like people are, I don't know, getting tattoos or something. Do they get tattoos in Japan? Where's Ryan Gable when you need him? Shout out Ryan Gable. He lives in Japan now, I think. But anyway, I mean, I don't know. If you want to fill in the blanks on this, as you know, we got a couple minutes here. So the Legends of Myrtle's Plantation, slave girl ghost story, as you described when we started. I asked you what it was. You found it. Thank you for that. And then this is it. So go ahead. Medjet or otherwise, what you got?
Yeah, well, basically there are a couple different versions of this story about this the slave girl that was on the plantation, and there's different stories about what she did exactly to make the family, the father of the family angry, but it eventually led to her death. It also led to, in one version, because she was caught eavesdropping. Again, according to legend, her ear was removed, and she would wear a turban over her hair to hide that. And people have seen this apparition of this woman wearing a turban, at least something like some kind of a similar garment, something to cover her head. Now, if you look around online, you can find articles, including this one we'll talk about at the very end there. In the article itself, they say that there is no actual historical evidence of the events in any of these legends actually happening the way that they are told. Not to say that they couldn't have happened. There's just no evidence of it. But either way, there are people that have seen and even possibly taken photos of a woman who matches the description of Chloe, this girl from this legend. And so the question is, how does that work? Did she really exist and her spirit is still there? Did she not? But then what is there? And why does it look like her, the way she's supposed to look?
Yeah. It brings to mind, Slenderman, this type of thing, Wikipasta, whatnot. Also, Clyde Lewis, Ground Zero, the entity that is, what is it that they got my AI image of? It's anyway, like so.
Doctor?
So are we?
Was it Doctor something?
Yeah, Dr. Heldor. Dr. Heldor. Yeah, exactly right.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you for that. I completely. I could envision the image. Anyway, so are we creating these things through our mind's eye? You're the best, James. Hang tight. Be right back. More Troubled Minds coming up. More with James. We got Herschel on the line and your calls as well. Don't go anywhere except for Shane. You're allowed. More on the way. Be right back. Welcome back to Troubled Minds, yada yada, blah blah blah, all the places. Please help our friends. Shout out Lily in Australia. Said this: people become night owls because of the noise pollution you find in the stillness of the night. Welcome to the stillness of the night as we continue talking about the silence protocol. Why we stopped hearing the old gods. Now, of course, conceptual thinking, philosophical constructs, thought experiments, all the rest of this stuff, okay? That's the whole point of this. But still, we came from somewhere. And also, we're headed somewhere else. And I think, as usual, right, that's one of the most basic things anybody could ever say. And recognize there's wisdom in basic. Because, yes, obviously, Mike. However, think of all the nuance between there and here. Think of all the reality tunnels, all the blood, sweat, and tears, all the anguish, all the triumph, all of the things that have ever happened on this little blue pearl floating out there in the wide cosmos. What's it mean? It could be nothing. But of course, I'm way too white-pilled for it to mean nothing. I believe in some capacity we're here for a reason. Let's find it together, shall we? Anything to add, James? We'll go to Herschel.
That's it's possible. I can't say I necessarily am at the point where I sort of know that we're here for a reason, but hopefully we are, and that'd be great. So looking forward to the rest of the calls.
Good enough for me. James backing me up. Hey, with a good solid maybe. And recognize too, by the way, in the larger context of everything, maybe is definitely okay. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. Thanks for calling. Thanks for waiting. Thanks for being patient. Herschel in Arizona. What's up, my man? My A's just are giving up 10 runs every night. How do we get out of this? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. What do you got for us? Welcome to the thing.
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I just remember this. I remember the 70s A's, and they were out of hand.
3 in a row. Hell yeah.
Yeah, they were something else. So I think that there's a definite correlation between the development of language and writing that had to do with, when people kind of replaced the gods with their own self-awareness and consciousness, when you were talking about Julian Jaynes. And I think that there's a lot of validity to the Julian Jaynes bicameral mind theory, but it happened over a long period of time. And it happened all over the place. It wasn't something that happened in an isolated way. It kind of was universal. I don't know what the impetus for that was. Probably stress factors. People, when people are under a great deal of stress and pressure, it kind of breaks things open and you have to solve problems. So it creates a necessity for survival that you adapt. And that you can see that, and you can see it all over. You can see it in a lot of different cultures. And the illustration I'll use is like when you could see language evolving in the Mediterranean area during like the ancient Greek times. So there's the stories of Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey written. Well, these were old, like oral stories, oral history passed down, that because at that time only the priest class could really read and write. And Homer is responsible. I believe I kind of like agree with the idea that Homer didn't necessarily write the Iliad and the Odyssey, but he wrote them down and put them in writing so that they could be passed around that way rather than just orally. And if you go back to Egypt and you go look at how language was, words in general, but especially the names for the gods were short. And that's because people were more guttural. People spoke in tones and grunts, kind of. I don't mean to be, that.
I'll help you. Oof.
Base about it, but like they spoke in shorter syllables. They spoke in a guttural way and less cerebrally. And if you look at, you don't have to read the Iliad and the Odyssey are difficult reads. You don't have to go read them, but you could just kind of look at them and you can see the difference between them. Because the Iliad is very pedantic. It's very like they used iambic pentameter as in the way that they wrote. It was very rhythmic and very physical. And then when you go to the Odyssey, that was how the Iliad was written. And when you go to the Odyssey, it's more long form. There's a lot of nuance and there's actual humor and comedy in it, which you don't find much in the Iliad. There's some irony in the Iliad, but in Odyssey, it's more conceptual. So you see these two stories and you see the evolution of the way people wrote and spoke. And you can see how language was changing over time and how concepts were changing over time, and it left a lot more to the individual to interpret it. In other words, some people could figure out what was being said and some people were taking it more literally. So you saw the transition between where people were, how people's brains like worked. You could see the transition, and you could see that there were varying levels of understanding. Like there were layers to the writing. Like you can read this literally, but then if you're a more sophisticated individual, you can get the inference, and you can get the humor, and you can get the comedy, you know. And so there was a lot more self-awareness of the individual who was reading it, rather than just being kind of a report, you know. And it's really obvious in that between those two things that were transcribed by the same person, you know. So he was consciously doing that. He wasn't trying to reinterpret the Iliad. He was trying to put it down the way it was spoken to him. And then Odyssey, he was putting it down the way he was spoken to him. But some people are going to get the different layers of the meanings, and some people weren't. So language and intelligence and everything was evolving, and the words were longer, sentences were longer. You know, there was more punctuation, there was more movement to the language. And I think that was shaken loose by necessity, by the fact that people were under stress and under survival pressure, and you know, they were going to become less dependent on they were becoming less dependent on their leadership and more dependent on problem solving as people, as individuals, as communities. And then you saw the Greek civilization, evolve into becoming a more decentralized decision-making process. That's where that's where the concept of democracy came from. People were reading, they were writing, they were communicating, they were developing processes of consensus and agreement and disagreement and working those things out. Whereas in the past, they just took orders. So the gods became less relevant. The priest class became less relevant, you know, because of the way things went. And it's interesting, you know, the word cosmopolitan is a Greek word. It came from the ancient Greek, and it was a cosmopolitan community. In other words, people from all over the Eastern Hemisphere would travel to that part of the world in order to participate in the economy for prosperity, and to participate in the arts, and to have a big, massive thought experiment. So they weren't just Greek. The ancient Greek society wasn't just like it was not an homogeneous society. It was cosmopolitan. It was diverse. There were people from different regions, people who spoke different languages, people who looked different. You look at the old art from Greece, you know, we generally think of them as European looking, but there were Asian people there, there were African people there, there were Caucasian people there, there were tons of Middle Eastern people there, Persians, Jews, the Sumerians, you know, all moved to that part. We're all moving to that part of the world, and they were developing a cosmopolitan society, a multicultural society.
Like it
was not homogeneous.
Actual enlightened space together, regardless of all those things.
And so how much relevance were the gods going to have if there's people who have all of these various backgrounds from all these different places and all of these different traditions, different names for the gods, and gods that did different things? And during that time, it was discovered that I can't remember the name of this god, but it was the god of secrets, the god of secrecy, they thought it was. And I can't remember what it was called, what they called it. And it was an interpretation of an ancient Egyptian god that they thought was the god of secrecy, because what it looked like was a god that had its finger on its mouth, being silent, like being quiet. But really, what it turned out, what that was, the Persians, when they moved into Greece, they said, "Hey, you guys got this god wrong. That's not the god of secrecy." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And it's like, that is just a depiction of baby Horus sucking on his finger. Because Horus was the child of other gods from the priest class of Egypt. So Horus was just, and then eventually Horus grew, and became a priest ruler. But before that, it was just a baby. And, and so that's what that god of secrecy really was. So there's a god that disappeared because they had gotten the interpretation wrong based on the pictures of it. All it was, I think Horus, I think somebody here probably knows, I think that Horus was Osiris and Isis' child. So it was just Isis and Osiris's little baby with his finger at his mouth, sucking on his finger. It wasn't the god of secrecy, And so then you had to be. So there were corrections. So they said, well, if we got that one wrong, what else did we get wrong? And they just kept talking, and eventually the gods faded away. They faded away with reason. They faded away with internal dialogue and communal dialogue and developing consensus and everything like that. And so that's that happened over a period of time.
Like 5,000 years or more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe not that long, but it happened over a period of time where language changed from the language that the priest class used to control society to the language that the people developed on, as a whole, as a group, as a society, as a collective effort.
Exactly right.
You know what I mean? And that was out of necessity. And then you can take that further too. I mean, there's so many examples of this, even in the relatively modern world with Darwin, and Darwin's like, what's the main thing that he did when he talked about, what's the main book he wrote where he described natural selection, the origin of species and natural selection and all of that. And people think of Darwinism and it's been, his philosophy has been perverted terribly by economists, where they talk about like economic Darwinism. And economic Darwinism for real would be very communal, because in Darwin's Origin of Species, and when he describes natural selection, he talks about the individual advancing society in a big leap, like just a few times. But he talks about community and the protection of the individual by the group more than, it's like 95 times he talks about that. Okay, and he talks about how that community and the protection that the group provides the individual, so that the individual, or the protection of the group, the protection by the group of the individual, so that the individual can provide something for the group. That is a much more dominant theme in Darwin's writings than the individual providing something for the group on its own. He barely mentions that, and so that has been something that has been terribly, misconstrued. The individual does not have the time or the luxury or the safety to have major breakthroughs to help the community as a whole without the protection of the group giving the individual that time and that safety to do that. Like the one is far more dependent on the other. The individual is far more dependent on the community than the community is dependent on any given individual at any level, leadership, whatever, and that is an evolutionary like reality. It's not like something that is theoretical. The group has to have a protection system. There has to be some kind of a mechanism for maintaining some stability to give the individual the time and the resources that the individual needs to create some sort of a leap. It's not in a vacuum. Nobody builds a business all by themselves. They have the rest of the community that needs their services, and they have the people who they employ that do all the work. There's all these self-made people, baloney self-made. They're all the current oligarchy are all G-men. They're all government men, from Bill Gates to Peter Thiel to Mark Andreessen to Elon Musk. They're all government men. They're all men who got their money from government connections, and this idea that they did this thing by themselves and they're these special elite creatures is just nonsense. It's just silly. It's just silly clown nonsense.
And
there's no way.
Interestingly,
there's just no way.
What you said too regarding that the individual is more reliant on the group or the collective. I mean, there's probably no greater example than was it Socrates, who was put to death for corrupting the youth of Athens or whatever. It's like, stop it, really? Like this is what you get for being an outlier. This is what you get for I don't know, like that's wild. Anyway, I want to read this. Give me 30 seconds. You are so smart. You're killing me here. This is, and I just want to add this for context to the larger conversation here. You actually pointed out Julian Jaynes. The link will be in the description. Please read, check this out. Obviously, Herschel's familiar with this. I didn't touch this as well as I should have tonight. Listen to this. It's just one paragraph. The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind is a 1976 book by the Princeton psychologist, psychohistorian, what kind of title is that? I want it, and consciousness theorist Julian Jaynes, past 1997. It explores the nature of consciousness, particularly the ability to introspect, and its evolution in ancient human history. Jaynes proposes that consciousness is a learned behavior rooted in language and culture rather than being innate. He distinguishes consciousness from sensory awareness and cognition. Jaynes introduces the concept of the bicameral mind, a non-conscious mentality prevalent in early humans that relied on auditory hallucinations. Dare I suggest, are the gods of old. Go ahead, sir. You're so smart.
Yeah. That book is really cool. There's some really great essays that are that come from that book too. Like there's a guy named Frank Wallace who's a very controversial figure, but he wrote a brilliant essay called Consciousness, the End of Authority. And I put a link in early in the show in the chat for that. If somebody wants to, if people want to read that, just scroll up and find the link I put in there. It's by Frank Wallace. It's called Consciousness, the End of Authority. I strongly, and it's free. The guy who put that up online, he made it available at no cost. It's really short anyway. It's a brilliant essay. It's really smart. You'll get a lot out of that. Again, Frank Wallace as a person, as an individual, was very controversial, but that doesn't mean he wasn't brilliant. He certainly was. He's, really something else. Really special writing. He definitely had his moments of like true, revelation. So yeah, and there was the other thing you mentioned, Socrates. It's the same old story with Socrates. I guess it's worth bringing this concept up here too. I think it fits in, I guess. But with Socrates, he had his proteges, one of whom was Plato. And Socrates was ostracized and persecuted because he was challenging the inherent authority of the aristocracy, which is what we're talking about here with the rise of consciousness. The rise of consciousness, facilitated and was, and precipitated the fall of the gods. And Socrates really embodied that. And that's why he was slandered and persecuted. What do they do when somebody's a bad guy? The first thing they say is that he hurts children. They say that he did a terrible, whatever the bad thing is of the time, that's what he gets accused of. That's what people get accused of. And it's the same old story. They did the same thing to Socrates. They persecuted him. And he chose to take his own life because he couldn't bear to allow them to take his life. And then Plato, this is really fun. This is a really fun thing to think about, maybe Juice, Plato wrote a book called The Republic. He wrote a book called Republic. And that book, the entire book is a book where Plato is basically blowing smoke up the behinds of the aristocracy.
Exactly. Establishing a new version. Yeah, exactly.
Right. He was saying, the aristocracy is important. This is how we have to live because they're a special class and they know the right thing. He was saving his own life because he was a protege of Socrates, and he was saying, please don't Socrates me. Don't Socratize me. Like I'll play ball. I will play ball. Look, I'm going to write a whole book. I'm going to write an 80,000 word book on how important you are. Please don't. But if you read the other things that he wrote, it's not consistent with those ideas. When you read his other writings, it's not consistent with the ideas of the Republic. So if you go read some of Plato's other writings, and then go read the Republic, and then read between the lines of the Republic, it's almost an inversion of itself. It's very white hat.
And the one everybody knows too regarding Plato is the Republic. That's probably his most famous work for a very obvious reason.
Right. But if you read his other stuff, if you read his other stuff first and then go back and read the Republic and then read between the lines, he's a really smart guy. Like he's like what he was doing, he was being like the Ted Koppel of his day, or like the Tom Brokaw or the Jake Tapper of his time. He was just blowing smoke up the butts of the aristocracy, to save his own skin.
And they were too stupid to recognize it. They just liked the good press, and they're like, yeah, hey, we like this guy. It's so stupid. It's so stupid.
Right. Like for real. Like, he was just saving his own skin. That's all he was doing. That's my opinion about that. I mean, I really think that. And a lot of people do. It's not this thing I'm telling you is not something new. In fact, where that thought germinated in my mind was by reading Frank Wallace's other works. He exposes that. He exposes what Plato was doing. And in Frank Wallace's other writings, he exposes some of that stuff. And that's where that kind of thought came from. The really important thing. And so that all fits in with the rise of language and the rise of writing and written language and the alphabet and, introspection and community and consensus and the fall of the gods. And then with Socrates and Plato and the aristocracy of their time. And it's nothing new under the sun, man. It's the same. It's nothing new. It's the same business. And it's just, they just use technology. So now with the rise of AI, they were already locking it down. We've talked about that before. They're locking AI down already. I was watching a great thing today. This guy who was on Rogan, I can't remember his name, but he has a show And it was just one of the most recent episodes of Rogan. where he was
Jesse
talking about-
Michaels or Michelle's or whatever, however you say his name. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, that's the guy. And they were talking about this kind of stuff too. I can't remember the exact reference I was going to make to that, what they were discussing, but it falls under the same. That was a great episode. I would really encourage people to listen to that whole thing that Rogan did with that guy.
I haven't seen it. I'll fire it up tomorrow on the road.
American Alchemy, I think, is the name of that guy's YouTube channel.
Yep. He's I'll withhold judgment. I don't know anything about him. I do know. Watching X, as you know, is toxic AF. There's aspersions cast. So I'll just I'll hold my thoughts on that because I don't know. I don't know if about. I don't like to one, go after people frivolously. Two, especially when you don't know really much about it. So I'll listen and then just make up my own mind tomorrow. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Cool. Well, good show, Mike. Really good calls. I like the diversity in the calls tonight. Like so many different, so many different directions like came at this issue tonight. Like people came at it from so many different directions, and it was pretty cool. It's a pretty cool show tonight. Good calls.
Agreed. Thank you. And you as well, by the way. Don't forget to follow Herschel. You know him, you love him. Commercial Herschel. And that's his Substack. Of course, you can find him at, let me pull up his actual link tree. And if you guys haven't checked out his link tree, it is the sexiest in the whole universe. And if you disagree,
don't be jealous.
Don't be jealous. I would like to see a nicer link tree than Herschel's. I'll drop it in the chat here. But please go follow him. And yeah, good stuff. Tradesman, traveler, guardian of my skull. Consciousness is the ultimate value. And thank you for sharing yours with us. And always a pleasure, brother.
Later. Good night, Mike. Thanks, Mike, for this great show. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks for the great call. You were the best. And go buy his book. All the links are going to be in the description there. And of course, right there, I'm going to drop it in the thing. Linktree, Herschel Sterling, Commercial Herschel. Go follow his Substack. Go follow all the places. Like I said, if you haven't done it yet, you're hurting my feelings. Please, would you please? For me, I'm asking you personally. I spend an unbelievable amount of my time that I could be sleeping watching a ball game on and off. Okay. And I'm not going to lie to you. It calls me sometimes, but I'm here. I grind through it. I persevere because I strive to do the things I say that I'm going to do. Okay. For my obstinate, bullheaded self, would you please go follow this man? Go buy his book. Please. Anything to add, James? Buy James's book while you're there too.
Just great call from Herschel, and just great calls from everyone. There's so many ways, like Herschel just mentioned, so many things people have talked about, and I do think that language and everything has definitely played a part in how things have changed, and it's still doing that. It's funny when you made that joke about caveman speak or whatever. You said oof. I put in the chat there. I see that in chats all the time on streams. Like that's just a common thing still that people put in chats. And not picking at anybody. I'm saying that's how long some of these things have continued up into other mediums, which is just really wild to think about that.
It is weird. But, you're right. The old the guttural aspect of this is it's also we're devolving to oof and poo-poo emojis. Is that a word? Let's make it a word. Yeah, I don't know. Complicated as hell. Go ahead. As you know, we got a minute or two or three left if you want to add anything else. Sorry about that. I started the music before you were finished. My bad.
No, it's okay. Just want to thank you for having me on as always.
And thanks for being part of it. You know me, love him. The glue of the show. James Salcedo, the paranormal expert in troubled minds, a dear friend. All the things. Again, if you're not following him in all the places, you're hurting my feelings. Please, please, please. For all the work and all the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into this, creating this, like I said, it seems easy now. Rewind 5 or 6 or 7 years or however long it's been, and you'll recognize that building something from nothing is daunting. It is, I was going to say humiliating. That's not what I meant. What's the word I'm looking for? No, it's daunting. It's one of those things that's, it's the ultimate challenge. And that's why this is such a special space, because of you guys. Like I said, I never could have dreamed we would have found so many amazing people as part of this. Probably because I didn't dream big enough. And so I guess as we finish, let's talk about dreaming bigger. And what does that look like? Not for me. What does it look like for you? If you can't conceive of it, it cannot happen. Dream big or go home. You guys are the best. Thanks for being part of this. You know what to do. TroubledMinds.org/friends. Help our friends. If you're not doing that, you're no friend of mine. Please, please, please. If you want to help us directly, spread the word. Let people know a conversation is happening where we're not going to tell you who to vote for. We're not going to talk about the mainstream narrative of nonsense, clown world politics, and all the goofball stuff that's going on. We're not going to talk about the big, beautiful bill and the orange man. I could. I'm following very closely. But we will not. You know why? Because everybody else does that crap. So why would we? Why would we? Good night, Steve. Ted in England. Rest in peace, Ted. We remember your buddy. Brent, Thor has sent a storm to me later. Hopefully we'll share. All right, cool. Help our friends. Spread the word. Let people know a conversation's happening. Thanks for being part of this. Thanks for carrying. That's it. That's it. As we finish, let's see. Who hasn't gotten a lot of love recently? This one is for our quiet friend of a long time on the Discord. Shout out to APOC. Be sure, be strong, be true. Thank you for listening. From our troubled minds to yours, have a great night.